Members, it is now 7:15, so we will start the meeting. Apologies, some of these clocks seem to be all saying a slightly different time, but it is 7:15 by my computer. So welcome to our Planning Committee meeting this evening on the 16th of April. We will move on to the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor Hayes, who is substituted by Councillor Bowers, and apologies from Councillor Ritchie, who is substituted by Councillor Prime. I assume Councillor Abbott is on his way.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman, I was just checking messages. There's nothing yet, so I assume he's on his way. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beale. There's probably traffic, so we will ask him, make sure he is included a bit later on. Item 2, declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest relating to items on the agenda having regard to the Code of Conduct for members? Before I just pass over to members, I'll just make a joint declaration on behalf of us all in relation to item 5H on the agenda, which is the application at September Barn, Little Yeldham, as one the applicant is an officer of this council, and also a joint declaration on item 5J, which is the item at in Ovington. Again, the officer is a member of this council. An officer of this council. Item 5J.
No, it's item 6, Madam Chair.
Is it item 6?
The,
Sorry,
TPO
I haven't actually got the second page printed off. Okay, item 6. Thank you very much. Councillor Baz-Flint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have got a shopping list, unfortunately. I have to declare an interest in 5A, 5B, 5C and 5D. And the reason being is I was part of the Cabinet that made the decision for these to go ahead as part of the Cabinet, part of the Council. And also in 5F, the Speaker, Mr Jamie Jewett, is known to me. I've known him since he was small, but I haven't seen him for a little while, to be fair, and I haven't spoken to him, obviously. So for him, I will stay and vote, but for the others, I will leave. Thank you.
Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Chairman. I will declare a substantive NPI in the first 4 items, 5A, B, C and D, the 3G pitches. I presented a paper to Cabinet on these in September last year, supporting the projects, voted in favour of them, so I will leave the meeting for those 4 items. I also need to declare just an ordinary NPI in item 5G, which is the Horizon 120 application. Just as a member of Cabinet, I've sat in on briefings and so on those, but have not taken part in any voting on this particular part of it, so I will remain and vote on that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spray. Councillor Bowers.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to declare an MPI in items 5A, 5B, 5C and 5D, as also a Cabinet member as part of the Cabinet decision in regards these sites. And also I'd like to declare an MPI in item 5G as the lead Cabinet member on the Horizon 120 site, and obviously know the applicant and know the site well and do a lot of work with the site. It's an MPI, but for transparency, I will leave the meeting and take no part in that item. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bowers. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, and sorry I'm a bit late. 5D, the new Rickstones Academy application is actually in Rivenall Parish, and Rivenall Parish Council have made a representation. I'm a member of the Parish Council, but I took no part in the deliberation on that. I sat in the car park while they talked about it.
You'll stay for that one, yes. Any other members make a declaration of interest? Okay, and we'll move on to the item 3 of the agenda, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Members, the minutes of the previous meeting of the Planning Committee held on the 26th of March have been circulated to everybody. Do you wish me to sign those as a correct record of the meeting? Thank you, Councillor Flint. Councillor Spear, thank you very much. I'll now sign those minutes.
Chair, do we need to take a vote?
Sorry, yes, we do need to change. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Next item on the agenda, item 4, is public question time. We don't have any registered speakers on general points, so I will move on to item 5, which is covers the planning applications. Just wait for the members to leave the room. So the first application this evening is application number 24/000025 full, which is at Notley High School, Notley Road, Braintree. That application is found on page 6 of your agenda. We don't have any speakers on that, and the presentation is going to be given by Jack. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Chair. So the application is at Notley High School on the fringe of the Braintree for a 3G synthetic pitch with sports lighting, perimeter fencing, storage container and access path. You'll see this is the first of 3 similar synthetic pitch applications that have come through, so I'm going to spend some time on this slide talking about some of the general terminology that will come up in the presentation to save going through it on each and every one, but if members want me to go over that again afterwards, I certainly can do. So a 3G synthetic pitch, also known in the other applications as an AGP, an artificial grass pitch. It's a 3rd generation pitch, which is to the modern standard that the FA support. The pitches themselves are of a synthetic turf. They're enclosed by wire mesh fencing with spectator areas and, in these cases, a storage container. They're fairly similar as we go through, so when I show you the facilities that'll make sense. But yeah, so with this particular site, you can see that the red line is drawn around the access from the highway. It draws around the pitch, and then there's the part that hooks round at the top there is where there was a previously proposed earth bund that was going to be formed from the excavated soil, because the pitch needs to be level. However, due to neighbouring concerns that we had through negotiation, this earth bund has been removed from the site. It's no longer forms part of the proposal. However, the red line stays as it is. However, nothing's proposed in that blank part at the very north. So what is proposed is the 3G pitch, a access path which you can see formed through here from the existing car park, and access through from the school. This is a slide which shows the field layout, so you can see the proposed pitch on the right there with the retained other pitches that would be formed in the general open playing fields, as well as a new cricket location to the west with an athletics track retained. In terms of where we are situated, to the south there is the A120, to the east would be the school, and to the west and north is residential development. The annotations I've put on are the distance from the nearest residential boundary, so that is to the gardens, the rear of the garden, as opposed to the dwelling. This is a proposed site plan where you can see again the pitch in relation to the existing trees on site. You can see annotations along the access path down here with BL, which is sort of amenity bollard lighting on the footpath. And in here, it will be shown on another slide, but PLC is the lighting columns which will measure 14 metres in height. I should say to the south as well, the applicant is proposing a no-dig hard surface due to the proximity to the tree. This again is another demonstration of the pitch layout. What I've done with this is I've zoomed in on the fence layout to make it easy. It's a 4.5 metre pitch around the perimeter of a 500mm high retaining board. As you can see in the right image there, there's an asphalt spectator area that's got a 1.2 metre spectator fence to separate spectators from the pitch. This is what those facilities would look like. So standard wire mesh fencing and a storage container, which would be for on-site storage of equipment, etc. These are the positions of the 40-metre high lighting columns. In the lighting design statement, it states that these would be kept below 8 degrees above the horizontal in terms of their tilt, and they'd be focused to spread the light across the pitch with minimum spillage. That's demonstrated on this plan here, where you can see the spillage contained to the playing field, and as you go further away from the pitch, the spillage falls away. In terms of the site positions, this is looking towards the west. This is the existing where the pitch would go. This is looking towards the north, so you can see the properties there of Lister Road as they bend round. And this is again looking straight down the west where the pitch would be. Looking back towards the school, you can sort of see the gradient as the site slopes down, hence why there's still some spoil generated as they level the pitch, which will be taken off site. This is a wide angle, so centre right of this image would be where the proposed pitch goes, and on the left you can see existing properties, and again that shows the existing properties in relation. And from looking towards the north, from where the access path would loop around. So there's a wording update to condition 9. The current application was recommended with a condition which referenced an ecology appraisal. However, this has been amended as that ecology appraisal shouldn't have been referenced, and actually it should just be a general condition which invites a biodiversity enhancement layout. Essentially, it requires the same things, it's just that it's not bound to that ecology appraisal because that was a drafting error from a similar application. So in summary, with the pitch, it's outside of the Braintree Town development boundary, but it's a site allocated for educational use, and the facility would offer sport opportunities for the pupils and wider community. It's acknowledged by officers that there would be lighting and noise impacts, as this is a new facility inserted into the site. However, I'm confident as an officer to move the recommendation that the controls that have been considered by condition and the management procedures that the applicant is proposing would manage the impacts. So there would be noise and light, but we don't consider that there would be an unacceptable adverse impact on the amenity of adjoining residential properties. There'd be no adverse impact on residential amenity in terms of the proposed lighting, and we considered that it would be acceptable from an appearance, design, environmental and highway policies. So subject to the changes recommended with condition 9, the application is recommended to be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Members? Councillor Schwer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to raise a couple of points. One is I'm a bit concerned about the residential amenity and the noise, and taking account of the proposed fencing. But I noticed there that in your photographs there was potentially an opportunity to not only increase biodiversity net gain, but help those residents with potentially a hedgerow, or a hedgerow that may allow to become some trees to break up that light, especially during the winter time. I mean, 6 months of light, because I see that the planning condition goes up until quite late at night in the winter time, and I think that would be really beneficial to those residents, because it would break that light format, because regardless of what you do, at 14 metres high, that lighting is going to be quite a block of light every time it's used in poor light conditions or darkness. So I'm thinking it's two wins, one for biodiversity net gain, but certainly one for the residents. But and also I think it would actually break up the other residents and the light escaping out as well. I think it would be beneficial. And could you just assure me that that the LED lighting there is that the intensity is only going to be what's necessary? Because I appreciate the shading is going to only go a certain distance, but if that is really stark light, I mean, is it going to be at a level that's just sufficient to, play those sports without it being too bright? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The lighting is designed in accordance with a lot of the regulations around sport pitch usage. The light is designed to, or it's aimed to light the pitch so far as is necessary and minimise the amount of spillage. So there's two parts to your question. Sorry, the first part with regards to lighting was...
Just assurance that it's LED and it will be at a level that's, acceptable, obviously, to play the sport. I think you've just explained that.
Yeah, so it would be to a level that's considered acceptable, and also from a environmental perspective, we've considered with our environmental health department, and it would be LED lights that are appropriate to manage the impact as part of the application as well. One of the conditions with regards to a post-installation lighting assessment in condition 11, what that means is with the application we've had predicted light levels presented to us and showed that there would be minimum spillage, but the condition is designed to say that you put the lighting up, you configure it, tilt it, etc. So it meets that level, and then you continue to operate under them configurations. So it makes sure that the predicted light levels that we're satisfied with are controlled and assured by condition. With regards to the landscaping, I've kept the image up as well. Condition 6, we've included a recommendation of a condition for a scheme of landscaping because we recognise that this site previously had a bund proposed which could have some benefits in that regard. However, its removal leaves part of the site available really for further consideration, so landscaping, etc.
I think it would be important to make it a condition that actually that is landscaped along there with a combination of hedges and trees, because I think it would be hugely beneficial, as I mentioned, not only to residents but also for the biodiversity too.
Yeah, if I can just come back on that, Councillor Schwer. So I think in terms of the lighting level, I think as Jack was explaining, the level of lighting is deemed it's been designed to be what's appropriate for the playing of the sport. That's the whole rationale for the thing. So it's all been designed in accordance with the guidance. So hopefully that can reassure you it's not excessively lit, it's just what's appropriate for the use. With regards to the planting, I think just a couple of observations. As Jack said, we're very happy, we've got the conditions, we feel we can control it. I mean, just in terms of managing expectations, I suppose there's two things to bear in mind. One is it's a school field, so everything has to be done in accordance with the school's wishes and safeguarding, so we have to be, I guess, a little bit careful. And as the planting would be, I think, envisaged to be within the red line that Jack showed you on the first location plan, where the bund was going originally. So we need to be a little bit mindful of the fact that there's some space at the back which may not be planted, and we need to be not creating a problem for the school. So I think we'll certainly look at it and come up with something, hopefully it's suitable, but just to manage that. And I think the other point just around the bund is we also need to be mindful of the residents as well. Although the planting should be of benefit to them, previously the application had a bund there which I think the applicant thought was going to be helpful in terms of providing some screening for them from the field, but actually the representations that Jack received from the application showed that actually they didn't want that, so that's why it's been removed. So I think we just need to be careful that we don't sort of create another problem for the residents and try and do the right things. So I think what we're saying is we'll certainly do it, but we'll try and do it in an appropriate manner given the residents and the school as well.
Yes, thank you, Neil. I mean, in relation to Councillor Schwer's voice, I was a bit concerned that there wasn't any reference to hedging on the plans, and that the residents may actually prefer not to have hedge. They might like the site of the football pitch. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm all for sports facilities and keeping people active and giving them opportunities. But obviously, in these cases, we have a balance to be struck between encouraging people to do that and the amenity of people who might live near to the pitches and wildlife, the night sky, etc. I spent the whole of this afternoon going through all the floodlight applications, and every single one of them is different. The 3 pitches are identical. They are all 61 metres by 97 metres, and they all have the same number of columns, and yet the lighting specification is different on every single one of them. And I cannot for the life of me understand why they're not all identical and why they're not all to the best specification. For this one, the column heights are 14 metres, the other 2 are different, one's less, one's more. From what I can see, the cowling on the lights is good, it's a good technology, but I'm very disturbed that the officer then said the tilt's going to be below 8 degrees, because when I read this technical specification, and they always make it opaque, you have to spend ages going through the documents until you really get what you're trying to find. It said 0% upward light ratio, which means they're flat. So there's a discrepancy there between what the officer's saying and what the documents say. The best practice is 0%, because then all the light shines downwards, which is where you want them, and you're minimising any light going into the sky and any light going into neighbouring properties. The second problem we've got with this is that the conditions are very good, where it says officers are going to come back later and a competent person has to check that the levels are as stated. But the problem is, again, all 3 applications have different levels of lux contours. So whoever does this is going to be cross with us, because if we do, and I'm going to suggest some changes. This one has an outer lux contour of 2 lux, which is about 10 times as bright as a full moon. It should be 1 lux maximum. So I think we need another drawing from them that shows where the 1 lux contour is. And the comment I'm going to make for all 3 of them is that, once again, what lighting engineers do is they operate as if they're designing floodlit pitches on the moon, so they take no account of scattering. I think someone said, as Councillor Swire said, if in misty conditions or damp conditions on a winter's night, you get a lot of scattering. So your theoretical, nice, sharp containment of the light goes right out of the window. You'll get a massive glow and a lot of forward scattering into people's houses. So my two points I'd like the officers to confirm, please, are: is this going to be 0%? Is it going to be 0 tilt? And to ensure that we do condition this properly, can we get from the applicants a one lux contour so that all 3 applications are the same?
Thank you. With regards to the first point, I have had it confirmed by the applicant when asking about the tilt, it's about 0 tilt angle, etc., and they confirmed to me that in discussion with their lighting consultant it would be 6.5 degrees is what they suggested to me. Their lighting statement says about 8 degrees above the horizontal. So that's what has been confirmed to us. If need be, I would check with Neil on this perhaps. But
Well, that's not what the technical specification says. I've written it down. It said 0%. So there's a discrepancy, and if it's tilted up, that's going to shine light straight across into neighbouring properties.
So, as Jack said, we've spoken to the applicant and the lighting consultant around it to make sure we had clarity around it, because as you said, Councillor Abbott, the reports aren't necessarily the easiest and we didn't want to misreport to you. So the scheme does refer to a 6.5 degree tilt, sorry, up to 8 degree tilt. The consultant has explained how the lighting would work in terms of the LED, the actual light emitting diodes within it, how they will be directed within it. And through that, and the cowling that's also proposed, that is, even with the tilt, what will prevent the light from causing a nuisance beyond. The other point that or the other question that you raised around the 1 lux contour, I'm not sure how we could deal with that in terms of conditions. If we're granting approval, we could ask for the lighting scheme to show the 1 lux contour level, so that the person assessing the scheme when it's installed can make sure it complies. But obviously they'll be providing that information to us after we've made the decision. So we can certainly do that, but just so you're sort of aware, it would be a recommendation for approval. So it would be useful in terms of the post-installation check, but we would only be checking against the information they provided us post-decision, if you follow my train of thought.
If I may, yes, I think that would be good, because then, and I think we need to do that for all three, so they're all the same. What you've talked about, the tilt and the cowling, yes, that's technically, physically possible, but it doesn't say that. What worries me is it doesn't say that. From what I can see in the documents I read everything that said lighting on it this afternoon, and I couldn't see that. So I'm wondering if for all three, we need an add at one line in the conditions that says, and taking everything into account, it will be 0 ULR.
So I think that we've assessed the lighting scheme that's been submitted, and as Jack said, we've confirmed the tilt, and we'll explain what the tilt is, because as you said, the lighting schemes are all slightly different because they've been designed by different people. On this scheme, it's been designed with the up to 8 degree tilt, so we could certainly put a condition on for clarity, if that would be helpful for members, to say the tilt of the lighting housing, the unit, should not be 8 degrees above the horizontal, so it's clear. But if we were to put a condition on which said they should be 0 degrees tilt, that's not what they've applied for, and that's not the scheme that's been designed. So that would present a bit of a problem for us in terms of what we would actually be approving.
What I'm saying is that I take your point, and technically you could have them very slightly angled up and still have nothing going above the horizontal. What I'm saying is there should be a line in the conditions that says, for all three, that says, and taking everything into account, it should be 0% ULR, to absolutely make sure that nothing's going above the horizontal.
I think on this particular one, because I was sort of rereading the reports this afternoon with Jack, I think on this particular one it does refer to 0 degrees above the tilt, which I think is what you've picked up from the report. But like I say, when we've checked with the consultant, there is the tilt on it. I think the point they're making in their lighting strategy or scheme, or however they describe it, is the 0 degree tilt. That is the light not going up. So although there is the slight tilt, it is in effect the same as having 0 degree tilt in the fact that there isn't any uplighting. It's all directed down towards the pitch. But like I say, we're more than happy to add a condition to specify the maximum level of tilt for the lighting housing unit above the horizontal, if that's what members would want when it's voted on. We could do that.
Are we happy with that? Councillor Abbott?
Yeah, if I could, yes. So I think we're slightly at cross purposes, but the wording something like the tilt should be no more, should not be higher than a level, something like that creates more than 0% ULR. So 0% ULR must be achieved by whatever tilt is used, if you see what I mean. Because 0% ULR is what it says in the technical specification. So I'm not saying the tilt has to be 0 degrees, but the ULR needs to be 0.
Okay, I think we can certainly look at adding a condition to that effect. Yeah, that's okay. And the point about the 1 lux level contour as well to be added, we can add that as well if that's what members would like.
Okay, any other members wish to comment on this? Could I just ask quickly a question of Jack? I presume the material that was going to form the bund will just be removed from the site now, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, members, would anybody like to move the officer's recommendation to approve this application? Councillor Diamond, seconded by Councillor Holland. All those in favour of approving this application? That's with the 2 amended conditions. Thank you, members. That application has been granted. So we'll now move on to the next application. It's item number 5B. It's application number 24/005784. This is the sports ground at Spinks Lane in Witham. It is on page 41 of your agenda, and the presentation, as we have no speakers, is going to just move straight on to presentation by Jack. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you. The application presented here at Spinks Lane in Witton at the existing sports ground is for the erection of a 2.5 metre high acoustic fence at the existing facility. Just so members are aware that it'll become apparent in the application that this is linked to one which will separately be presented to you. However, this is a standalone application, so any decision reached here is a decision on this case and its merits. The application is at the Spinks Lane Sports Ground. The existing facility you can see sort of in the centre right there of the image. Here it is zoomed in. As you'll be able to ascertain, the proposed development is across the south-eastern perimeter of the existing sports facility. For reference, the application, which will subsequently be presented later in this committee, is shown adjoining. Here you can, a zoomed in perspective, so you can see that the acoustic fence goes across the boundary there of the existing facility. In terms of acoustic, the appearance, the elevational appearance of the acoustic fencing is a standard 2.5 timber built high acoustic fence. This is the existing facility, and if you were to orientate yourself to the right from that image, you can see the existing residential context to the southeast. So the site is within the Witton Town Development Boundary, has a formal recreation designation. That's the existing sports ground at Spinks Lane. So the site relates to the existing artificial grass pitch within the sports ground, and will provide the acoustic screen to the existing AGP, where there currently is none, which is aimed to reduce noise level from the existing facility. Now, officers do not consider that the introduction of the fence would impact the character and appearance of the area unacceptably, whether this was to be built on its own or if it was to be built concurrently with the adjacent facility, should it be granted. So as I referenced at the start, the acoustic fence is presented in connection with the existing facility, the purpose being that it helps to limit the overall noise impact from having two sports facilities on the site, and the evidence does suggest that the new fence would lead to a decrease in the predicted cumulative noise levels when compared to the acoustic fence, should it only serve the adjoining facility. So on its own merits, it's an acoustic fence to the existing facility, and it would decrease noise levels. And yeah, there is an underlying cumulative benefit with the adjoining facility. However, as I said at the start, this is a standalone application on its own merits, and the recommendation from officers at this stage is that it's granted, subject to condition.
Thank you, Jack. Members? Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pedantic point. On your slides with the elevation and section plan for the acoustic fence, they appear to be two different fences. One's vertically, the other one's horizontally panelled. Can you tell me what we can expect?
Yep, it would be, I would presume it's the elevational drawings that we have is the horizontal span. The other one was an indicative image to show the depth of, and to show that it would be to standard acoustic depth treatment, etc. So.
Any other members wish to comment on this application? Councillor Shreer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm just a bit concerned about the actual specifications of the acoustic fence, because it's a point, although these are the illustrations, because obviously an acoustic fence has to have a certain quality and depth of material in order to bounce sound. So could officers just reassure me that the acoustic fence will work as per the application in that cumulative effect, not only joint but obviously for that, because it should the actual specifications of that acoustic fence not be good enough, it might not function as well as possible. And I'm just a bit concerned that the quality of it all, I just need reassurance of that, because the quality is there, the height is fine as far as I'm I think it will help, reduce the noise as stated in for the application. But I'm just a bit concerned about the volume of proposed wood in there in order to reduce the sound that's being proposed.
So with the consideration of this application, we've consulted with our environmental health officers and they consider that the specification is agreeable and it would reduce the noise impacts. It comes around to a point as well where this is to serve the existing facility. There is no acoustic treatment there at the moment, so this will have a betterment. However, it still needs to be, as you say, it can be a betterment, but it should be an effective betterment, and it should be the best quality it can be. So we have consulted with environmental health that they were satisfied with the details.
Any other members wish to make any comment on this application? I assume no. Anybody like to move the officer's recommendation for approval?
Madam Chairman, I'd be happy to move officer's recommendation.
Thank you. And seconder? The seconder, Councillor Holland. All those in favour of approving this application? Thank you, members. That is unanimous. The application has been granted. So we'll now move on to the next application, which is item 5C on your agenda. This is application number 23/03067 full. It's again at the Sports Ground, Spinks Lane, Witham, and this item is on page 55 of your agenda. No speakers again on this item, so I'll move to the presentation, which was going to be given by Jack.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the second of the 3G AGP facilities proposed with perimeter fencing, acoustic fencing, a hard standing area, storage container, floodlights and access to footpath at the Sports Ground, Spinks Lane. So a similar location plan to what you would have just seen, just with new development proposed, and that is the proposed 3G AGP next to the existing facility. A playing field layout shows the existing playing field and the proposed to show the current activities against what's already there. As you can see from the site plan, a fairly standard in respects to what I presented in the previous application. It's to the same specification. It is again enclosed by wire mesh fencing with a spectator area on the perimeter and a storage container. Again, I've zoomed in to show the fencing layout within the site plan. Again, the smaller fence separating the spectator area from the pitch. The difference with this application, of course, is that there is a 4.5 fence line on the southeastern perimeter with a 2.5 high acoustic fence, which would join in the eastern corner of the pitch with the acoustic fence that was subject to the last presented item. The proposed pitch plan shows how the pitch can function. Different lines show different configurations and layouts that the pitch can have, so it can be divided for separate activities if desired. The proposed facility elevation, so the difference here is that the lighting is 13 metres in height with the perimeter fencing, and then 1.2 metre high spectator fence. The storage container is a fairly conventional feature, again for the equipment storage, etc., related to the on-site activities. The location of the floodlights on the pitch is fairly consistent with the last one. In discussion again with the applicant, they've suggested on this case the lighting would be at a 70-degree tilt. Their view is it accords with national guidance, and they've included integral spill control louver measures which limit the amount of light spillage. The floodlighting scheme demonstrates the floodlighting around the light spillage around the pitch, and through consultation with our environmental health officers who wanted to ascertain the existing light spillage from the floodlights on the second generation AGP and put them together with the spillage from the proposed facility. That provides spillage that doesn't introduce any additional impacts on neighbours from the existing site. For the site, this is looking southeast. That's towards Epping Way. This is looking towards the south, and that's towards King Edward Way and the cul-de-sacs which are formed from it, so there's Allen Road and Thurston Road. This is again a closer perspective of the boundary with Epping Way, and that's the existing sports pitch, and this is the site of the proposed. This is looking again towards the south, King Edward Way. And this is the perimeter with Stevens Road, which is to the north of the site. So a substantial conifer boundary there. This is the access through from the car park onto the pitch. So you can see on the left there is the existing AGP, and the proposed would be on the other side. There's a correction to the recommendation, which is informative, raised by Sport England. It's just to remove the second paragraph, as the development would not affect a non-turf cricket pitch, so that informative is not needed on this case, so it will just be the information that's in 3I. And in principle, the proposed development is supported by local plan policy subject to the material considerations, and that's managing the impacts that arise from the development. It will increase the intensity of use of the site, despite it's already in a sports ground use with an existing 2G pitch. Officers are aware that the cumulative impact of introducing new activities will produce some new impacts. However, officers consider with the mitigation that is proposed, there'd be no unacceptable adverse impacts on residential amenities, either from noise or lighting. That is subject to the conditions that have been recommended in the report. The development be acceptable with regards to appearance, design, environmental and highway policies, and officers consider that the public benefits on this case outweighs any identified harms. The recommendation on this application is that it is granted subject to conditions.
Thank you, Jack. Members, Councillor Abbott.
Could I just first clarify, did the officers say a 7-degree tilt or a 70-degree tilt?
So they've confirmed it was a 70-degree tilt to the light fixture. It's with a louvered panel, which is, as described to me, it's a wire mesh type thing that's put onto the light fixture to limit the light which spills, so it can only spill downwards and forwards into the targeted areas.
Well, nowhere in the technical specification did it say that. And I would strongly dispute whether it is technically or physically possible to achieve what they set out in terms of their spillage with a 70-degree tilt. The floodlights on the adjacent pitch were built, I think, in 2005, 2006, and they're 0-degree tilt. And here we are in 2024 proposing much brighter lights at a 70-degree tilt. It's just ridiculous. There's no, those lights are just flat panel LEDs. Well, you're going to have to come up with some extraordinary contraption around them to stop them shining into the sky or straight across into people's houses. Coming back to the point that Councillor Schweier made, the requirement for these sports pitches is 200 lux. That's 10 times brighter than a bright town centre street light. So you have to really have very strong controls on lights like this to stop them causing impacts. And I'm just shocked that this council is even considering angling lights up at 70 degrees. I mean, the actual technical papers quote the ILP guidance, which specifically says that these types of lights should be angled downwards. So it's just ridiculous.
So, just coming back on the point, in terms of the comparison or the existing pitch, which, as you said, Councillor Abbott, with the 0-degree tilt, I mean, the applicant has made an assessment of the existing lighting levels, so that's the diagram which is on the top left-hand side of the screen. So you can see spill coming out from the sports ground, virtually or touching the residential properties. In comparison, the proposed pitch and then the cumulative assessment of the light generated from both, the proposed pitch with the lighting that's proposed has a much narrower, much more controlled spill from the pitch. I think the lighting plan as well with the lux levels, I was just checking your point earlier, this one does have the 1 lux level on it as well. But just to make the point, I mean, the lighting which on the adjoining pitch would have been, applicable to the standards and the technology that was available at the time, in comparison with the new scheme that's being promoted here, which is employing the current technology that's available, the new technology that's available. I absolutely understand your concern about the tilt, but in terms of the spill, which is what we've been looking at carefully and thinking about the residential amenity, it's much more controlled for the brief, well, as Jack has tried to explain, in terms of, although it's tilted up, the fittings that are applied to it and the direction of the LEDs controls the light much more, so that it's not spilling beyond. So the tilt, I think, was perhaps, or my take would be, the tilt would have been more of an issue with the older technology, perhaps where the diodes were less directed or the shielding or the whatever was less applicable. But in terms of the assessment they've proposed, and this is what we would be assessing it against, we've got that post-installation condition, this is what we would be measuring it against. So I would say, well, on the basis of this, in terms of spill and control, it's appreciably better than the existing pitch, notwithstanding the fact that there is the tilt which the existing pitch doesn't have.
If I may come back, Madam Chairman, I just, where are the drawings? Where's the drawings in the technical specification that I spent hours this afternoon reading, and where's the slides tonight which show us how a 70-degree tilt on 3 flat panel LEDs produces 0% ULR and that delivery of containment? I've been looking at these type of drawings for decades, and we're being presented with something where I strongly advise members, there's no information to prove what is being claimed. None. Where's the drawings?
So in terms of the approved documents, the documents that are listed for approval on the report refer to the drawings and the technical information that's been provided with the application, but include the lighting levels that are approved. And like I said, that's what, with the post-installation assessment condition that we're recommending on all the applications, including this one, this is what the scheme would need to be delivering. If they don't deliver that, then it wouldn't be in compliance with what we've approved, and therefore it wouldn't be compliant with the planning permission that's been granted. So the control that we have is that they would need the scheme that they install, which they've designed and which they're saying this modelling is based on. They need to be able to comply with this and the levels of lighting which are shown in this drawing and the other one with the lux levels as well.
I think the question really would be whether condition 9 is do you feel that's strong enough to control the post-installation assessment, and should we also include the amendment we made to condition 9 on the previous application about not having light spilling above 0 degrees? If that's how we interpreted it previously, what do you think of that?
I would be, I listened as well just for a second confirmation, but I would be satisfied to amend the condition to ensure that, as I say, we've been presented the scheme and we've assessed it, environmental health officers have assessed it, etc. So there is an expectation of what the lighting should be achieving, and if that isn't achieved and when checked, then, as Neil said, they'd be in breach.
So, just rereading condition 9, which just to make sure it's clear. So the assessment needs to be carried out, needs to ensure that the predicted light levels within the approved plans documents above are achieved. lighting is sufficiently shielded and the approved lighting columns are positioned and or tilted to minimise light spillage and glare. So, I mean, to my mind, that is fairly tight in terms of it ties them to installing a scheme which complies with the lighting levels and the control and the spillage that's included within the application documents. If members wanted to, or had any suggestions on how it could be strengthened further, then obviously we'd be happy to consider that. But I think as officers we were sort of fairly comfortable that that gave us the level of control that we needed so that we could be confident when we're recommending it to members that the lighting levels and the controls that are shown within the application documents can be achieved and will be realised.
Thank you, Neil. Do you want to come back? I'll let you come back one more time.
If I may, yes. Obviously, we don't have to apply the 1 lux one on this one because it's already in there, which I was going to mention. I was also going to mention the fact that these columns are 13 metres, so that's a metre lower than the previous one. Again, why? But I think we should include the same line that we'd had in the first one, which is to say that overall it's 0% ULR.
Thanks, Councillor Abbott. Do any other members wish to make any comment on this application? Councillor Schwer.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I'm a little bit concerned about the lighting as well because, as the officer said at the beginning of the meeting, with those 3 AGP pitches tonight, you would have thought that all of that lighting would have been very, very similar, if not standard, as approved and recommended by Sports England. So to see this kind of variance is a bit concerning, but I'm a bit happier to follow officers' comments and recommendations, but providing that we can have the opportunity to go back to ensure what is being proposed is achieved, because I would have thought the lighting would have been similar throughout all 3 applications.
Yes, good, Neil.
Just to explain that, because it does seem a little bit peculiar, but to explain the process. So the Football Foundation, who are obviously providing a significant, or will be providing a significant amount of the funding for the pitches if they're approved, have appointed contractors to do this work. So they have a national panel of contractors, so they go through a procurement process and tender the pitches. So these 3 pitches were all tendered at the same time, so the different contractors go out, visit the site, work out the cost that they could provide the pitch to the Sport England and Football Foundation guidance and standards, and then they're appointed on that basis. So peculiarly, although it might seem strange, we've got 3 different applicants on 3 different pitches with 3 different lighting designs. They're all working off the same framework, designing to the same standard, and applying that, albeit they've come up with different solutions as to how they achieve it. But just in terms of context, just to explain that, because you're right, Councillor Schwer, it does seem peculiar that we've arrived where we are.
Thanks, Neil. I suppose there are just different ways of achieving the same thing, effectively. Does any other member wish to make a comment? Otherwise, I will ask for somebody to move this application. Councillor Holland, have I found a seconder? Councillor Schwer. All those in favour of granting this application with that amendment to condition 9. And thank you, members. Those against? Thank you, Councillor Abbott. So that application is granted, but not unanimously. Thank you, members. We'll now move on to the next application, which is again another football pitch. This application is item 5D on your agenda. Application number 24/005, 352 this is at New Rickstones Academy, Conrad Road, Witham. It's on page 89 of your agenda. We don't have any... Oh, sorry, we do have a speaker on this application. Sorry. So, can I ask Mr. Betts to come to the table and make your statement? You have 3 minutes to make your statement, Mr. Betts, and there is a button to press on the microphone there.
Good evening and thank you. This project offers an ideal chance to introduce a state-of-the-art sports facility for aspiring footballers young and old. The facility will be extremely popular with the Academy's nearly 900 students and with Whittam's football family. It will contribute positively to social outcomes and health priorities. With excellent support from the Council's planning team, the credentials of this proposal have been assessed and enhanced where required to make certain that it would be compatible to an educational setting whilst preserving residential amenity and being complementary to the surrounding environment. Focusing on three aspects to demonstrate this level of care. Modern sports lighting is very efficient and creates minimal spill light. The proposed design confirms that light intrusion and glare are substantially lower than maximum permitted values. For example, light reaching neighbouring properties would be 0.1 lux, whereas the limit is 5 lux for an environmental zone E2. This means 50 times less light than the recommended limit. It is now common for LED luminaires to be installed parallel to the ground, which is known as zero tilt aiming, to minimise any glare. And in terms of lighting the wider environment, yes, the illuminated facility would be visible at night to onlooking views, but it does not light the wider landscape, just land immediately surrounding the facility. Traffic and parking have been a source of some concern, and the mitigation here is to make parking available for community visitors during evenings and weekends, so there will be no reason to street park. There is ample cycle and car parking for visitors outside of the academic day, and the Academy will promote active travel to reduce vehicle trips wherever possible. And just to confirm, the service access from Rickstones Road to the Academy will only be used for construction traffic and not for general community access. All community access would be via the main car park from Conrad Road and through the sports hall, which provides supervision, management and welfare facilities. With respect to biodiversity, plans are already underway for an enhancement strategy, and this will include areas of neutral grassland and tree planting along the southern boundary of the playing field to further reduce visual impacts and to fragment onlooking views. This enhancement strategy would bring a 9% biodiversity net gain. In summary, this project is aligned with the Football Association's national strategy relating to quality, inclusivity, sustainability and engagement. Therefore, the delivery of this project would provide students and the local community with access to an essential and contemporary football facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Betts, for that statement. Very helpful. We'll now move on to presentation, which again is going to be given by Jack for this one.
Thank you, Chair. So the site is at New Rickstones Academy. The site falls within the Whittam Town Development boundary, but it does fall within the parish of Rivenhall. The application is within the existing playing field related to the New Rickstones Academy, which you can see to the southwest of the red line, with the access formed through from the highway. The site adjoins an existing hard surface tennis court, and the proposed site plan, which includes the existing pitch, shows how the proposed facility would interact with the wider existing retained pitches. The proposed site plan here shows again the distance from the nearest residential boundary, so that's a 50 metre to the southwest, and that's to the rear garden boundary. The proposed pitch plan, which again consistent with the other applications, shows the existing facility, which would be within its wire mesh perimeter with a spectator area on its perimeter to the south. The flood lighting strategy here demonstrates again the concentration of the lighting down and across the site, the pitch area. And the proposed facility elevations show again the standard 4.5 metre fencing. As noted, this application has a 15 metres high steel mast with amenity lighting along the footpath. With this slide showing the proposed fence and gate elevations of the facility itself, so the two wider and the two narrower perspectives with the floodlighting. The applicant has provided 3D renders so that you may be able to see the development as it were to be developed, which would look like this. And from a wider perspective, it's quite helpful in setting this in the context of the wider area, residential area with the school there, is this is the existing and this is the proposed. There is a TPO area which covers the new Rickstones Academy and the perimeter of the playing field and the Rickstones Road highway perimeter. By overlaying the site boundary onto the TPO area, the red line does cross into it, and the development of the earth bund, and that's to the south of the pitch, would be within the proximity of the tree that's demonstrated in that image. At the bottom there is a further slide which enhances that image. This is the access into the sports pitch from within the school. You can see the existing tennis court on the left. This is the school on the left and the access there being on the right. And this is looking back towards the access as it heads towards the highway. Again, this is the gate at the field perimeter with the access path. And this is a view from within the site, looking across to the north of where the proposed facility would be. This is looking back towards the school, so the pitch would be on the right there. And this is looking from towards a southerly perspective, and then houses that are existing on the other side of Rickstones Road. This is where the facility would be proposed. This is where the proposed earth bund would be proposed. It would sort of climb at a gradient in this position. This is the nearest residential neighbour to the school site and development. And this is the previous photo, just enhanced, of the tree that falls within the TPO, which is nearest to the site of development. You can see also in neighbours' property there are trees, etc., and there's some smaller trees still planting within the school side of the site. Members' update since the publication of the report. Rivenhall Parish Council submitted an objection to the application. There were concerns about the lighting and the visibility of lighting, extra traffic generated, and exacerbating the existing problems that are with parking on Rickstones Road and access Forest Roads, that's on-road parking, which would be exacerbated. Noise could be a problem for local residents, and it's proposed for the pitch to not be used, and this is a suggestion that the pitch not be used after 8 p.m. because of the aforementioned concerns about lighting and noise. A correction to the recommendation as well, informative 2 can be omitted with respects to the standards in the delegated report. It's not required for this site. The remaining informative numbers can be amended accordingly from that stage. So the site is located within the Whittam Town development boundary. It's an allocated educational use in the adopted local plan. The facility again would offer sport opportunities for pupils of the school and members of the community. The appearance of the facility would not be outkeeping nor the supporting infrastructure, i.e. the earth bund, subject to conditions concerning landscaping management and tree protection. As noted in the presentation, we fall within the site aggressed into the TPO group with that tree noted nearest to the earth bund, so the conditions would require further tree surveys and an agricultural method statement to ensure that the works do not impact in that regard. Officers again acknowledged that there would be an increased intensity of use of the site and introduced impacts in terms of light and noise. However, with the mitigation proposed, there would be no unacceptable adverse impact on amenities of adjoining residential properties, either through noise or light, subject to the conditions and management proposed. So it's considered that development would be acceptable with regards to appearance, design, environmental and highway policies, and therefore, subject to the omission of informative number 2 and the subsequent numbering of the informatives, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Members, pass over to you. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, it's a bit like a worn record tonight, but I'm going to say it again, this is different again. And what I find incredible is this is the one that has the worst impacts, but in the most sensitive location. I don't know if members recall the slide where you saw the aerial view and then the landscape view. This is the one that most opens out into the countryside. And there are, in fact, farmland boundaries within a few tens of metres of the site. No assessment has been made, as far as I can see, of the impacts on those hedgerows. Turning first to what the applicant said in the public session, he referred to 5 lux for an environmental zone E2. To give members an idea, 5 lux is 15 times brighter than a tropical full moon. It would be like having a street light at the end of your garden on all the time. 5 lux is bright. We shouldn't be aiming to minimise light levels to 5 lux. We should be keeping it down way below that. And as per the comment I made before, that's the lowest contour is shown that I could see in the application. So the first one had 2, the second one had 1, and this one now goes back up to 5. So we don't have any technical information at all on where the 1 lux contour would be for this development. So when we apply those conditions, what are we applying them to? A much too high a level. Again, it should be 1 lux. The presentation said it's now common for LED luminaires to install parallel to the ground. But the 2 previous applications, one was at 6 degrees, then 70 degrees. What's this one? No idea. It didn't say in the technical specification. I spent hours on it this afternoon, couldn't see it. They all 3 should be 0 to the ground. The applicant says it's 0. What is it? I couldn't find anything on that. Will not cause any impact to the immediate surroundings. Well, it will. This will be visible for a long way across the countryside, particularly as those columns are the highest of the 3. They're 2 metres higher than the first application. No reason is given why they're that much higher. Biodiversity, as I said, there's no assessment whatsoever of the light pollution impacts on the farmland hedges, which are very close nearby, within a few tens of metres. And there's no assessment either on the impact on the John Ray Walk. The John Ray Walk runs from Rickstones Road at the other end of the playing field. And over the years, we've got on very well with Rickstones Academy and then the Chapman School more recently. They turn their lights off at a very reasonable time of night, and one of the reasons for that is to protect the John Ray Walk, which is a back corridor. There is no assessment in this application for the John Ray Walk. Typically, the Chatton lights, I think, go off at about 7 o'clock. The school lights go off later. But to have these lights on at 10 o'clock at night, in that context, I would agree with the Parish Council. For this one, we need to bring them back earlier, either 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. And interestingly, on this one, I don't know if members noticed, the evening and bank holiday time is earlier than the other 2. The others, I think, are 8. This one's 6 o'clock. So I think that would be commensurate with that. I thank the officer for having the Rivenall Parish Council representation up. I mean, as I say, I took no part in that, but I'm not surprised they raised concerns. And another aspect of the lighting is the colour temperature. The colour temperature of these floodlights is 5,000 Kelvin. That's extremely high. I had a look at the technical specification for the company that produces them. They're called Sitco, and they say that 3,000 K is wildlife friendly. So why is the developer from the same company using floodlights which are 2,000 degrees hotter? I also got off their website a picture of the units. This is what they're proposing to use. No shielding whatsoever, aimed sideways, no cowling. I mean, again, the potential perhaps for severe light pollution impacts and for impact on residential amenity is very great. So I find myself amazed that, again, this is different, but of the three, in the most sensitive location, this is the worst. And I don't see how we can possibly grant this. I think we need to defer and for the applicant to come back with a much clearer assessment. Is it 0%? What is the exact design of the lighting? Have they assessed for the nearby hedgerows? 9 o'clock. Making it better so that we reach what I said for the first application, a much better balance. This one carries the highest risks. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
I'll ask Jack if we want to come back on any of those points.
Thank you for raising the points. Through discussion with the applicant developer, my understanding is that these would be fixed at a 0 degree tilt, just for full disclosure. Through the considerations of the application, we've assessed the lighting documents, again, environmental health, and our ecology officer has considered the application and no objections are raised, subject to the conditions that form part of the report. So with the evidence brought forward, we consider that with the conditions that there would be appropriate management. Appreciate from the previous discussions there could be, if we were minded to grant, there may be a change to the condition wording. However, from your discussion, Councillor, I anticipate that you've referenced the deferral, so it would be a kind of consideration whether we consider amending the wording of the condition again to further strengthen the conditions if it's satisfied that the impacts would be appropriately managed by that. But you know, we've assessed based on that with the input from our Environmental Health and Ecology Department, have considered that with condition it would be an acceptable scheme. So that's sort of where the recommendation's been informed in those regards. That's what I would say.
Councillor.
Well, I think the problem we have is that the outer contour is 5 lux, and as you know, Place Services, and I think it's too high, but that's the level they use. 1 lux is the threshold they use. We have nothing in front of us which tells us that the hedgerows and the John Ray Walk will not be lit to an unacceptable level, because there is no assessment at all. It would be standard on any application for us to require an assessment of what the light spill was into potential back corridors. So I think, I mean, I take your point that we could put the 1% lux contour on the condition like we did before, and we could condition the 0 ULR, which is good. But the problem we've got is that neither of them would cover, in this particular circumstance, the protected species requirement, which we are required by in law to take into account.
Has there been any assessment of the the impact on bats as part of this application?
Yeah, but as part of the application, our ecologists have done their checks as well with respects to ecology, but yeah, we've no objection. Sorry. So there has been ecology information submitted as well, and that's informed. Again, there are site-specific considerations, what with grey crested newts, etc., and the recommended non-licensed method statement due to the recognised proximity. But there has been a consideration provided, and as I say, officers have been advised that subject to the conditions, it would be acceptable.
So, taking on Councillor Abbott's point about the 1 lux level, and I understand the concern about ecology and bats, and obviously from the Council's point of view, we're going to be doing something which would be detrimental to a protected species. what we could look at doing is, rather than having a condition which simply required the submission of a plan which showed a 1 lux contour level, and that would just be for the purposes of checking the scheme, we could make that a pre-commencement condition. We would need to get the approval of the applicant to that because it's a pre-commencement condition. I think the applicant would agree for a 1 contour lux level to be provided. We could consult our ecologist so they could be provided with that information, notwithstanding the fact that they haven't objected when they've assisted the application originally, but we could make sure they have that additional information, and then that condition would need to be approved before the commencement of development. So if that was a way of addressing members' concerns in respect of bats, certainly in lighting, then we could look at a condition like that. As Jack said, we've had confirmation that it's 0 degree tilt, but we can certainly, for the avoidance of doubt, add a condition about the ULR again, if that was what members would like.
Let's have it with you.
Sorry,
Content with
I'm
that?
sure I'm hogging things tonight, aren't I?
Yes.
But it's an area of interest. No, I think those three things would provide some assurance. So the 0%, the 1 lux contour for the checking as per all three, but a specific one on bats. And with respect, the ecologist can, unless there's a drawing I haven't seen, the ecologist cannot possibly correctly assess for bats because there isn't a 1 lux contour on any of the drawings. If that 1 lux contour goes behind the hedges, and they're not amenity hedges, they're rural field boundary hedges, which we would typically want to protect from anything above 1 lux, then they're going to have to do, I would presume what you're saying, Neil, is they're then going to have some further mitigation to stop that. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah, I mean, the agent's here tonight, so he's actually had the benefit of listening to the discussion, but I think from our point of view, listening to what members are saying, I understand the concern, and I think that's the best way that we can try and tackle it. If when the 1 lux contour plan was produced, it showed interference with the John Ray Walk or the field boundaries you're referring to, Councillor Abbott, then we would expect our ecologist to highlight that if we didn't have a concern ourselves, and we would say that wouldn't be acceptable. We couldn't discharge that condition. So we'd have to think about the wording of the condition. Like I say, I think it would need to be a pre-commencement condition because it obviously goes to the heart of the permission. But I think we could do that. And yes, certainly if when the 1 lux contour was produced, it did interfere with either of those sensitive areas, then yes, we would be expecting them to demonstrate additional mitigation to control that. So I think that seems to be the most sensible way to address the concern, but try and move the scheme forward if that's what members would like.
Well, that does seem a sensible way of addressing it. Are you happy, Neil, and Jack, that you understand the issues to be covered out in pre-commencement?
Yeah, I think what we'll do is Councillor Abbott's sort of has a particular interest in moving this. I think what we'd like to do as officers is probably just check the wording of the condition with him before we put it on. So we'll draft something up and agree. I know we wouldn't ordinarily do that, but I think given the discussion tonight, we just want to be confident that we're doing what the members are asking us to do, if that's okay with you, Chair.
Yeah, I think that's a very sensible way forward. Okay, members, anybody else wish to make a comment on this? In that case, would anybody like to move the officer's recommendation subject to this additional condition? Councillor Prime, move that. Any seconder? Councillor Holland. All those in favour of this county officer's recommendation? Thank you. All those against? Abstentions? Thank you, Councillor Abbott. That application has been granted. Let's wait for the other members to come back into the room. Right, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 5E on the agenda. This is application number 23/02334 full, which is at the Strutt Memorial Ground, Malden Road, Hatfield, Peveril. We don't have any speakers on this application, so we will move on to the presentation, which is going to be given by Fiona. Thanks, Fiona.
Thank you. So this application considers the construction of 2 outdoor tennis courts with associated floodlighting, and this is at Strutt Memorial Ground, Malden Road, Hatfield, Peveril. So just as a bit of context, you can see this little blue square here within Strutt Memorial Ground, and you can see Malden Road to the northeast of the site, and you can see Hatfield, Peveril Village Hall just to the east of the site. So a bit of a closer up, there's the location plan. So you can see the red line of the site here includes access from Malden Road, and you've also got pedestrian access from towards the Village Hall, and this is where the proposed tennis court would be located. So this is within one of the main recreational spaces for Hatfield Peveril. So just some context for the site here. So you can see this is looking from the car park of the Village Hall towards the recreation ground. You can see in the distance here there's the outdoor gym that's a relatively recent addition to the recreation ground. And again you can see here, so this is from the public footpath which runs along the northern boundary of the site looking towards where the application site is. And again a little bit further along the footpath you can see towards kind of the northern end of the application site. And again a little bit further along, so this is from within the application site, almost looking towards the outdoor gym and the Village Hall. And from the back of the application site looking towards the Village Hall. Now, so for some context of the closest residential properties, this is looking from the application site towards the rear of properties which are located on New Road. And again, properties a little bit further west along New Road. So this is the application site. You can see the proposed site is here for 2 tennis courts. Now this plan gives an indication of how existing sports facilities at the site could be retained. So Sports England originally submitted a holding objection to the application as they were concerned that the plans didn't demonstrate the ability to keep sports pitches, football pitches at the site and ensure that the proposed tennis courts wouldn't prejudice the use of the site for other sports. So here you can see a closer look of the courts. So you've got the Village Hall here, you've got the car park here, and then these would be the 2 courts with a pathway leading towards them. So the proposal would see a kind of perimeter fencing of 3 metres in height, which would run along the outside of the courts. And then you'd have the 2 courts there, which would be made of porous tarmac. And there would be lighting columns, which are located, you can see them. You've got 3 along this side, 1 down the bottom side, 1 at the top, 3 along this side, and then 1 lighting column here with 2 lights towards the centre of the court. So the perimeter fencing would be 3 metres tall, and the lighting columns would be 8 metres tall, and with the lighting fixtures themselves, that would total an 8.3 metre height. And this is just a kind of a 3D visualisation, so you can see in the distance there, these are the closest residential properties which run along New Road, and those are the closest properties to the proposed tennis courts. And that's a better indication as well of the layout of the site. So this is an indicative plan of the proposed fencing, so you can see it wouldn't exceed 3 metres in height, so it would be kind of just your standard security fencing. And these are some elevations to put into context kind of the fencing, the lighting columns and the proximity to the other buildings in the vicinity. And on the right there, that's a typical lighting column. So moving on, then obviously the application does propose lighting, and this is the proposed lighting plan. Now on this plan you can see here they have included contours, so this outer one here is 0.2 lux, and then it moves into 0.5, 1 lux, and then obviously the higher lux levels within the site itself. And again, these are the near-in residential properties, and it's considered that these would be, the 0.1 line is about here on the submitted plans. So the proposed flood lighting would include integrated louvers. And here again is another indication of showing the lux levels for the proposed flood lighting. So the hours of operation of the site as well would be Monday to Saturday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. In the summer, that would extend to 10 p.m. And then on Sundays and bank holidays, it would be 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. and that would be extending to 10 p.m. in the summer. So just a little bit of a member update. Then further clarification was sought over the lighting on 2 points. So one of the points was the colour temperature of the lighting. So this is proposed at 4,000 Kelvin. 4,000 Kelvin. And BDC Ecology have clarified that as the closest environmentally sensitive zones are outside of the light spillage area of the site, then this would be appropriate. And then with regards to the tilt of the light fittings, then the applicant has provided clarification that the majority of the light fittings would be at a 0 or -1 degree tilt. The central, the two central lights would be at a 28 degree tilt. Environmental Health have confirmed that they would be happy with the proposal, as it is likely that the 0 tilt lighting would require higher wattage lighting and further light spillage. Obviously, just in light of the conversations that we've had today on the other sports pitches, just be mindful that the proposal seeks conditions number 6 and number 7. Now, number 6 does require a full lighting design strategy to be submitted, so if it would be considered appropriate to consider the ULR of the lighting, then I'm sure that that condition could be amended appropriately to include that. And condition 7 is similar to the ones on the football pitch ones in that it requires that the checking of the light levels once it's been constructed. So just in conclusion, the application site is within Hatfield Peveril Settlement Development Boundary. Policy LPP 50 obviously supports the provision of recreation, so there is no objection in principle to the proposals, and it's considered that the benefits of providing this new tennis facility would outweigh the modest harms subject to conditions. Therefore, it's recommended that the application is granted subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Members? Councillor Shreer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think this is a very good application, and I think the inclusion for this planning application with the other sports facilities here will be very well used if passed tonight, because I think it's very complementary to the actions in there, and I think, as we have all said tonight, we welcome the opportunity for as much sport as we can, especially taking into account the various funding measures that this facility will potentially come about. And I note the comments in the officer's report of 7.221 and 2.2 with regards to sort of not only the lighting but also the ecology as well. And I know recently the group of volunteers have done an awful lot of hedgerow planting around the boundaries as well. So I think overall, considering the conversations that we've actually had tonight about lighting, which has been, I think, beneficial, and I certainly take Officer's point about different contractors actually getting different light designs but getting the same effect. But I think, you know, our concerns from as members is quite well founded, and I think, you know, the progress that we've made on those applications tonight will be beneficial. But overall, I think this is a very welcome application, and I'm happy to move it. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Shreer. Anybody else like to comment on this? Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I echo Councillor Shreer's comments. There are, I think, a number of proposals for tennis courts and sporting facilities. I know that I think Halstead will be something coming to committee fairly soon on tennis courts as well, and this is, you know, entirely welcome. We are trying to encourage residents of all ages to participate in sporting activity, and this appears to be a very well thought out application. I think a good deal of thought has gone into the placement of the courts and the lighting, impact on residents and so on. So it is very welcome, and yeah, I am very supportive of it. Thank you.
Councillor Abbott.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, just briefly, I'd like to reiterate I do support the sporting facilities. It's good that we are providing more, but I would just reiterate the point that given that we have a supplementary guidance policy on this, given the ILP guidance, given the local plan, given all the conversations we've had around these tables over the years, I just think it's extraordinary that we've had 4 different schemes, not one of which is best practice. And I just wonder how, I just raised the question as to how we got to that place.
The reference to the ULR, do we want to add that, given the fact that we've had a discussion about this in previous applications? Would that be sensible?
Yeah, I think it's something that condition 6 can be amended to ensure that the lighting strategy that comes forward can include, compliance to a certain level.
Okay, I think that would be a good idea to include that. Does any other member wish to make a comment on this application? Councillor Beavis.
Madam Chairman, not so much just on this application, but broadly what we've spoken about this evening. What I've struggled a bit this evening on is that we now have the member forums where we've all agreed actually they're working quite well, and it gives us the opportunity to have that deeper dive into applications. And I think given the feeling of what members have put forward this evening, I just wonder whether there's something that we could do about this, because I'm not convinced tonight's been particularly constructive actually, and I think we could have resolved some of these issues at the forum. We could have easily have sort of put it onto one of the meetings, and I think what we're saying tonight is that on this application the strategy is going to come back with a condition but for officers to look at. So actually on that application we're not going to go as deep as we have on the other ones. I've just found it a bit disjointed, I guess is the word I'm looking for, and I just wonder whether going forward, bearing in mind, and it doesn't surprise me at all that Councillor Abbott's brought forward these comments, because historically he's done it for years, his sort of views on this issue. So I just wonder whether going forward we could perhaps look at maybe having the discussion at one of the forums, bringing them all together. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, point noted. I think that's not really relevant to this planning application specifically, but I think the trouble is this is a very technical subject of which most of us around this committee room are not really expert on. So I think it's something really is better left for the officers and the environmental health officers. Neil?
Yeah, I take Councillor Beaver's point. I think certainly with the Members Forum, it's a chargeable service. So we can encourage applicants or developers to use it, but because there is a charge, ultimately it's their decision. We're not forcing people or can't force people to come to the forum as it's constituted at the moment. I think certainly we take on board the comments that have been made tonight around lighting. I think perhaps one of the points that I would take away from Councillor Abbott's comments was we're currently doing a review of our local requirements list in terms of the documentation that needs to be provided with planning applications. And I think perhaps one of the things, if we haven't looked at already, is another thing we need to look at the lighting information, and perhaps we need to think about the way that that's presented so that there's technical information for technical consultees, perhaps to seize upon all those with greater knowledge, and perhaps there's something which is a bit more accessible, a sort of high-level document perhaps, which will be helpful as a sort of signposting exercise. So I certainly am taking that away, and we do, as officers, we feed back the comments that we get at committee. So I'll certainly take that on board, and the other comments have been made by other members this evening. Thank you.
Any other members to make a comment on this? Well, it has actually been moved by Councillor Swear that we grant support the officer's recommendation. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Bowes-Flint. All those in favour of supporting the officer's recommendation to grant? That is unanimous. Sorry, with the amendment to the, yes, condition 6. So that we're really happy with that. Thank you. Right. We'll now move on to item 5F on the agenda, the next item. This is application number 23/02367 full, The Grange, 33 Lions Hall Road, Braintree. We have a speaker on this application, who is Mr. Jewett. If you'd like to come to the table, and you have 3 minutes to make your statement. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time. My name is Jamie Jewett, and along with my wife and business partners, we're the applicant promoting this exciting and highly sustainable housing scheme. We have our hearts set on leaving a positive impact in the local area and aim to make a difference to the place that our children will grow up in. The goal of this exemplar development is to drastically reduce the cost of living for young families like ours and the environmental impact of new housing in the district, focusing on key efforts in terms of sustainability. We aim to help new homeowners benefit by not only saving substantial amounts of money, but also creating energy independence, providing safety from energy shortages like the recent one that had our country at its knees. My Energy, our main green energy partners, will be fitting these incredible new homes with state-of-the-art eco-tech such as solar panels, multiple battery storage systems, eco-boilers, converters and car chargers, just to name a few. These will also come complete with an app that reads every appliance in the property, accurately measuring grid dependence and offering tips to reduce energy usage in certain parts of the property in real time. My Energy's revolutionary new software installed throughout these homes will also help to solve fundamental issues with wasted excess solar power generated from private homes and address the terrible compensation homeowners receive when selling their excess green energy back into the grid. More developments like these in the future will mean that the UK as a whole has less dependence on other forms of energy production and will ultimately contribute to our country's ability to one day reach net zero. We are confident that this scheme should be supported on its merits despite the recommendation for refusal. Firstly, the development is an innovative and contemporary design, striking a positive balance between preserving and contributing towards the local character and appearance, and introducing a development suitable for the site with its own vernacular and design driven by very strong sustainability credentials. The development is capable of delivering high-quality landscaping scheme with sufficient scope to deliver compensatory tree planting without detrimental harm to any existing high-value trees. This can be secured through an appropriate condition. The site area is the product of our aspirations to retain some of the existing buildings and land on the wider site to retain a buffer to restore and extend the former orchard and safeguard the amenity of existing residents along Lions Hall Road in terms of overlooking and privacy. The proposals are technically sound against all other considerations, including ecology, drainage and highways. Overall, the development is the first of its kind as an exemplar sustainability housing scheme that, when balanced against any perceived harm, should be afforded substantial positive weight in the planning balance, and as such should be granted planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. We'll now come to the presentation, which is going to be given by Janine.
Thank you. This application relates to the erection of 8 dwellings with associated access and landscaping. As you can see on the location plan, you have Lions Hall Road to the north and Thistley Green Road to the east, and the site is located outside of the development boundary. On the block plan, as you can see, the area to the north of the land is not contained within the red line, and this is immediately behind the properties in Lions Hall Road. It's also noted that any other ownership by the applicant has not been included in this application in terms of a blue line. Officers are of the view that the red line has been artificially engineered to fall below the threshold for providing affordable housing and other planning obligations. In addition, the number of dwellings proposed as 8 falls below the major development threshold to remain as a minor development. In terms of the site plan, officers consider that the overall layout is at odds with the grain of the surrounding development, resulting in a small suburban cul-de-sac, which is unlike the prevailing local character, which is dominated by generous plot sizes with significant distance to the boundaries. There's also concern with respect to the extent of hard standing proposed, poor arrangement of visitor spaces, and there's also no space for significant tree planting within the site. In addition, the layout, particularly to the southern southwest corner of the site, would have significant pressure on existing trees to be removed or reduced, given the extent of shading that may occur for future potential residents. The next few slides will illustrate the overall scale, massing and appearance, so I'll just go through them because there's quite a few of these. But in terms of the scale and massing of the dwellings, officers consider that they would result in a dominating effect within this countryside location. In terms of the elevational design, the houses are poorly articulated, dominated by large roofs, which are out of character with the traditional properties in the vicinity of the area. The proposed materials also are quite alien to the surrounding context. For example, zinc and cedar are not defining aspects of the local character, or the local palette together with cement panels, which is not characteristic of the area. With respect to the proposed street scene, officers consider that the proposal would result in a bland street scene, repetitive and failing to provide an attractive environment or create a sense of place. The proposed development, by reason of its siting, layout, poor detailed design, would appear overly dominant and out of keeping and detrimental to the character and appearance of this countryside location. The proposal has therefore not overcome the previous reason for refusal, which was planning application 21-01882 OUT, which concluded that the built form fails to reinforce the local distinctiveness of the built environment. If we move on to the photos, these are the existing outbuildings along the eastern boundary. The view of the site looking to the southern boundary and the southwestern boundary, and also the bottom picture shows looking west. This is the view looking towards the north of the site, with properties in Lyons Hall Road, and the existing vehicle access to the site, and this is Thistley Green Road to the south. Following the publication of the agenda, I just wanted to update members. The applicant contacted Essex Suds team regarding the Holden objection in relation to the inadequate surface water drainage. Since the publication of the agenda, additional information has been received in respect of a flood risk assessment, which has been fully assessed by the lead local flood authority, who have now removed their objection. So officers can confirm that reason for refusal number 3 on page 184 of the agenda can now be withdrawn. To summarise, the application is a full application for 8 dwellings. Obviously, the benefits would provide 8 market dwellings and economic benefits during construction and thereafter. In terms of the adverse impacts, the application site is not allocated for development and lies within the countryside. Officers consider the site has been engineered to be below the threshold for major development, resulting in no contributions planning obligations. The poor layout and design fails to reinforce local distinctiveness of the built environment and the harm to trees from the level of development proposed. Please just ignore the point in relation to the sustainable urban drainage system, which has just been updated. And then the final element is the lack of planning obligations. Officers therefore recommend to refuse permission for this application.
Thank you, Fiona. Members. Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, the statement by the applicant, although is admirable in many ways in flagging up the eco-credentials of the proposed dwellings, something that we are keen on and we look for with new housing, but does not, in my opinion, overcome the adverse impacts of this proposal. I think Janine has made a very good case in her report for the fact that this almost seems, well, it does seem to deliberately fall below the threshold for providing affordable housing, and the design and the layout is incompatible with the area, which is a very rural site. There is a lot wrong with it in terms of planning and meeting our policies. And for me, as I say, the good points, and there are good points about it, don't overcome the reasons for objection. And I will leave it at that, I think, for the moment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Spray. Any other members wish to comment? Councillor Bevis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I think it's worth noting that we have looked at this application site previously as well, and I concur with the points actually from Councillor Gabrielle Spray. I mean, I actually run this area quite a bit, and when you actually get off Lyons Hall Road, I'm just really mindful that we're in such a rural setting. And I would agree, I think the presentation this evening is admirable, but I just think it's clear overdevelopment actually in such a rural locality. And it's just not fitting to the street scene of that area. So I'll wait to hear other comments, but I'm also minded to agree with officers' recommendations. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We so often have volume developers come to us and shake their heads when we say, "Oh, you're going to have solar panels and less technology for energy efficiency." And there's not a lot we can do about that outside of building regulations until we get government policy that helps us. So it's a shame in a way, because the applicant, obviously has majored on the energy side of things, and I'd like to commend him for that. But unfortunately, in all other respects, the application fails, and I think the clearest one for me is the local plan. We spent an awful lot of time on a local plan, setting down development boundaries. This is outside of it. There's the worry about the trees, 30 to be lost, and the possibility that others could be compromised by buildings being close to them. And I think the officer's point on the way in which the site area falls fractionally below thresholds which would require affordable housing consideration is a point made, and it's not the first one we've had like that. So, for all those reasons, I can't support it, Madam Chairman, and I'll vote with officers.
Councillor Schwer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, I tend to agree with the comments that have just been made by Councillor Abbott with regards to the applicant coming forward with actually what was very interesting, at last, a credential for people in the future to be able to have housing that they can actually afford to live in and run once they've purchased it, because it's a really important point. The fact that they are sort of have got eco credentials, but the idea that all houses would potentially have solar panels, be energy efficient, low cost to run. With regards to the design, I think design is subjective. I personally think that the design is okay. And with regards to being sort of different to the others in the street scene, I think we have potentially got to look at different designs in street scenes, because there are quite a lot of changes to come about. And in fact, we do have, and in fact, I've got one in Great Maplesford of an incredibly modern design that's bang in next to the village hall and next to schools and everything else, and it's surprising how it fits in. So I don't think we should be pushing down good design, but I think that it is subjective, and I take that point. But overall, I welcome the applicant's design and effort into all of those for energy efficient houses, and I think that is exactly what we need in Braintree District Council going forward. But otherwise, I agree with the other comments with regards to being outside the development envelope. It's a shame it is, but with regards to the other factors of being a site as well, I consider that is important too. Thank you.
Any other members wish to make a comment? Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think, without wishing to be argumentative, that it is true, because my own home is an example that you can hit very high environmental standards and green energy objectives with properties that actually fit in with the street scene, even if it's very traditional. So I don't see that houses where they set out to deliver these sorts of outcomes have to look like this. The other thing is that did slightly concern me is some things in the developer's statement this evening do strike me as things that might or might not work So I know also from personal experience that you can think that you're going to develop a piece of software which is going to make a radical difference to everything, and then the real world comes along and makes life extremely difficult for you, and you find there are things you can't do. So I don't believe that we should be making decisions on things which are as uncertain as that. I therefore have a great deal of sympathy for all I've heard this evening, and particularly for the report from the officers. And so I will be supporting officer recommendation. Thank you.
Any other member wish to make a comment? In that case, could I ask if anybody would like to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Spray, does that find a seconder? Councillor Beavis? All those in favour of refusing this application? Those against? Oh, that is unanimous. Thank you, members. We now move on to item 5G on the agenda. This is application number 23/02807 out. This is land west of Horizon 120, Horizon Boulevard, Great Notley, and this is to be found on pages 187 to 306 on your agenda, members. There's also an additional document that has been circulated with some amendments. The presentation on this, we don't have any speakers, so the presentation will be given by Alison. Thank you, Alison.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, members. The application I present to you this evening is in relation to a hybrid application for up to 55,000 square metres of employment floor space at land to the west of Horizon 120, Great Notley. The hybrid application seeks full planning consent for the southern part of the site and outline consent to the northern part of the site. The application is a departure from the development plan in that it falls outside of the development boundary and is located in a countryside location. For ease, I will present the full application and outline elements separately. In terms of site context, the site extends 13.75 hectares and is currently used as arable farmland, set across 2 fields with trees and hedgerows around the perimeter of the site. An established tree line follows an existing ditch and cuts through the bottom portion of the site. The area to the south of this represents the detailed element of the application. The existing Horizon 120 sits to the east, which is currently under construction. The A131 runs along the eastern boundary in which vehicular access into the existing Horizon 120 is gained from the south and from the north. Slamsey's Farm is located to the south, which contains listed buildings and sits, and to the east there sits Tesco Superstore and Gridserve to the south. Great Notley Country Park is located to the north. Sorry, it's confusing, it's kind of the wrong way round the slide. There you go, that's better. On a larger scale, this shows the site in its context, with the extent of Great Notley Village, Blackley's Quarry here to the south, and the Chelmsford Racecourse. The extent of the approved solar farm, which is outlined here in green, has been recently approved by Uttlesford District Council and sits within their jurisdiction. The Braintree Council boundary line runs down south here. This shows the extent of the approved solar farm with the site here with the green arrow. Further off the page is the existing Horizon 120. The solar farm occupies over 100 hectares. This is just showing you some of the surrounding area. So this is the bridleway that runs along the eastern edge of Phase 2, but along the western edge of Horizon Phase 1. Looking south, I'll run through these quickly. This is looking north from the bridleway over to Great Notley Country Park. This is a view still along the bridle path looking to the east, towards British Offsite. This is as you're going towards the south of the proposed site, where the bridle path actually comes into the red line within the site. And this is looking over the south site, which is the full application element. You can see Slamsey's farm in the distance. This is the tree belt, which forms the bridleway that cuts through the centre of the site. And this is looking from the opposite direction, from the western boundary, looking at the existing Horizon 120. And this is looking north, right across into Great Northley Country Park, further up, further to the north. And again, this is the southern portion of the site, which occupies the full application. In terms of the existing movement network, I thought it was useful to show you the existing situation. Movement into the site is from the existing A131 with the vehicular access points here. Pedestrian access and cycle access is also accessible from these locations. There's currently a bridleway that runs along the western edge of the site, runs across the application site where the tree belt is located. The footpaths and the bridleways link up to Great Notley Country Park, which is to the north here, and there is an at-grade crossing just here along the A131 to the north of the roundabout, which provides pedestrian and cycle access to Great Notley Village and Tesco's over to the east. A further access point is located to the north within the country park by way of a subway, which allows access to Great Notley for cyclists and pedestrians, and Great Notley Country Park can be accessed by pedestrians and cyclists and equestrians from the site. The services available within approximately 400 metre walking distance are indicated on the screen. The plaza provides a cafe. You have the Tesco Superstore to the east, which provides daily goods and also has a dry cleaners, pharmacist, nursery to the rear of the in this area here. And to the south is GridServe, which provides Marks and Spencer's and Costa Coffee and a post office. Zone A, which sits to the north of the existing Horizon 120, has approval for service uses, which allows restaurants and cafes and everyday services as part of the LDO. Strong interest has been shown by leading retailers for these spaces, but no conversations have yet been undertaken with the LPA. In terms of the outline element of the application seeks consent with all matters reserved for up to approximately 39,000 square metres of employment space for research and development, industrial processes, storage and distribution, and ancillary office. The outline element extends 9.38 hectares of the northern portion of the site. Applications for outline planning permission seek to establish whether the scale and nature of the proposed development would be acceptable by the local planning authority, but more detailed proposals are submitted at the reserved matters application stage. The outline application is accompanied by a design code and parameter plans and an illustrative master plan which demonstrates one way in which the site might come forward to accommodate the quantum of development provided. The proposed layout consists of a developable area which sits inside a significant landscape buffer, which you can see there in yellow, and green is the landscape buffer. The parameter plan shows details of the strategic landscape, which covers approximately 2.4 hectares of the northern site. Whilst it is unknown how many buildings will come forward for the outline plot, the design code follows the principles of the existing Horizon 120 business park, firstly due to its success, but also for consistency in terms of design. Within the landscape buffer, a permissive part, which you can see in orange here on the screen, I think, yeah, this permissive path here, provides a circular walk around the site and links into the existing prowl network to the north and to the south here. The permissive path will not be adopted within the prowl network, but would essentially extend the opportunities for walkers, cyclists and equine users, and has been designed to take all users into consideration. The illustrative master plan shows buildings of a rectangular form on this outline element, with building lines close to the development plot boundary. Whilst not an approved document, it gives an indication of what could come forward feasibly to be built on the site within the parameters shown. It also shows the access into the site to the north, along with the extent of buffers and landscaping which are regulated by the design code. A large suds area drainage basin is located to the northern tip of the site, known as the Northern Park. This acts as an extension to the existing SUDS wildlife area at Horizon 120. Apologies, which is located here. The SUDS area also acts as an amenity area for employees and members of the public, as well as creating new habitats to promote biodiversity and ecology. The main strategic green space of the development will be structural landscape buffer for the site. As well as providing a new walking route, the existing perimeter vegetation will be bolstered by additional native tree and hedgerow planting, as well as understory shrub and grassland mix, to maximise opportunities for maintaining and creating new habitats. 2 sections of the existing bridleway, which is Great Notley 27, sit within the entirety of the site subject to outline permission. The first being the south-west-north-east boundary section of bridleway, which cuts through the centre of the site, and it's located to the northern boundary. All the bridleways will remain in situ, and whilst there will be a change in character, a large buffer would be created, which you can see on this section here, with additional tree planting. The section on the screen shows a picture of the existing bridleway and the proposed formalised bridleway through the centre of the site there. In terms of building heights, these will not exceed 16.5 metres in height. An LVA was undertaken for the preparation of the application in order to inform and establish the scale appropriate to the site. The findings were that the site is relatively well contained visually, with many of the viewpoints being so distant that the scale of the proposed development would not be significantly sensitive when compared to the adjacent Horizon 120. However, routes through and around the site are closer, and as such the impact would be likely. The design for the southern site set the parameters for the northern site and are based upon providing additional landscape planting for setbacks within the edge of the site, and these have all been established within the design code, which you can see in the sections here. Essentially, the higher the building, the more landscape buffer will be provided. The design code sets out the materiality to the expectation at the reserve matters stage. Essentially, the majority of the facades would consist of profile metal sheeting and composite metal panels for the main buildings. This shows an indication of an already built unit on the EOS site that is not occupied at the moment, just gives an indication of the inside. What does EOS mean? EOS is the site opposite the plaza, which has the smaller units. Sorry. I assume people know. In terms of the full element of the application seeks full consent for a 15,925 square metre building for storage and distribution, which is B8 purposes, and for ancillary offices. Access to the southern site is predetermined with the only available route for vehicles being the extension of the western stub from the existing Horizon 120 roundabout, with direct access to the north, to the A131, which is the north-east. The new access road into the southern site will provide suitable vehicular routes throughout the site into the service yard to the rear, whereby a road will wrap around the north-east and eastern portions of the site, and parking will be provided to the north and to the east. A new access point to Slamsey's farm will be provided here. A new permissive path along the eastern boundary will link up to the existing bridleway to the north. The bridleway extends outside to the north of the full planning application. So this permissive path will link up here and then will loop round this area of the site, creating a circular walk around the site. The building is located to the north of the plot to maximise the visual separation to Slamsey's farm, so no harm is caused. The placement of the building responds to the need to protect the visual amenity and not detract from the setting of the listed buildings at Slamsey's. The development will incorporate an extensive landscape strategy to provide 0.95 hectares or 1 hectare of structural landscaping for mitigation to the sensitive site surroundings. In order to enhance biodiversity, SUDs are incorporated along the southwestern boundary, providing a sustainable drainage feature that will feed into the overall drainage strategy. The full element of the application includes a biodiversity net gain of 40.47% in habitat units and 15.91% increase in hedgerow units. The landscape strategy includes a 3-metre height bund to the south-east and south-west boundaries, which will incorporate new tree planting to aid visual mitigation to Slamsey's farm. The images on the screen show the extent of the tree planting on the bund. This is, sorry, my screen is, how do I move that, sorry. With no proposed mitigation, you can see the building to the rear there. This is with mitigation after 5 years, with the trees growing to the back there. This is after 10 years, and this is after 15 years of growth for the trees. In terms of materiality, the building will be constructed using metal composite cladding and rain screen cladding. In order to accentuate the office entrance, there will be a change of texture and colour utilised to frame the prominent area. A full height glazed curtain wall wraps around the corner of the front elevation, and the office is articulated through full height glazing with contrasting infill panels. A CGI of the proposed building can be seen on the screen, looking from the roundabout in an entrance. In terms of tree loss for the entirety of the hybrid application, in order to facilitate the development and the access points in, 2 trees and a total of 42 metre length of hedgerow would be required to be removed. Whilst it's regrettable that there will be tree and hedge loss, importantly the remaining existing trees and groups of trees on the site are being all retained, particularly around its boundaries and through the centre of the site, where well-established mature tree cover exists. In terms of tree planting, the scheme includes significant proposals, landscape buffers, green corridors and street trees, and a commitment to net gain made across the site, meaning that more trees, which are approximately 450, would be planted than are lost. In terms of the outline application, a minimum of 30% of the projected energy requirements of the plot, including the building, will be provided through renewable energy technology, which has also been achieved on the existing Horizon 120 Business Park. The principle has been embedded in the design code, which all applications at reserve matters stage will be required to adhere to. In terms of the full application, the 30% target has been met by the inclusion of air source heat pumps and solar panels on the roof. The initial BREEAM assessment for the southern building is on target to meet BREEAM Excellent. I'm now going to run through the planning balance. In terms of the planning balance, the adverse impacts need to be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal. In terms of the adverse impacts, the application is in conflict with the development plan due to its countryside location, which is afforded significant weight in the planning balance. There would also inevitably be harm caused to the character of the landscape as a result of the change in use of the site. The proposal includes significant planting with appropriate landscape buffers, high quality design and control on height of buildings within the application site, which would help to mitigate the visual impacts, reducing the harm in the long term. However, it should also be recognised that the surrounding landscape has already had a major change with the introduction of Horizon 120 and the adjacent solar farm. The site in its immediate context has the ability to absorb change, and as it has done already with the approved commercial schemes. Therefore, the introduction of the proposed development adjacent to the existing Horizon 120 and the intervisibility between the two developments would not give rise to any further unacceptable landscape and visual harm. The nearest residential properties to the site are Slamsey's farm, directly to the south, and 1 and 2 Blackley Lane, which is approximately 100 metres from the nearest boundary on the western edge of the southern plot. All other properties in the area would be separated by intervening agricultural fields and Blackley Quarry. However, the development has the potential to adversely impact upon the amenity of occupiers through any piling or general noise and disturbance, all of which could be mitigated through the imposed conditions. A degree of harm would arise from the loss of 2 trees and a stretch of hedgerow. However, it's considered that much of this harm would be mitigated through provision of biodiversity net gain across the site and obligations to provide new trees. The proposal would result in the loss of 13.7 hectares of Grade 2 best agricultural land. However, this loss is mediated when it is appreciated that Braintree has a district overall has a proliferation of BNV land. It also needs to be recognised that the site would be a natural extension of the existing Horizon 120, and therefore location of the site is key to the success of this application. It's considered that the loss of BNV would not be of a scale likely to significantly undermine the provision of such land throughout the district. It is inevitable that development on the site would give rise to vehicular movements, which would place additional strain upon the existing highway infrastructure. However, these effects would not be as great as they would otherwise be on account of the measures being taken to encourage employees to take up alternative sustainable modes of transport and additional enhancement of the highway network. It has been judged that residual cumulative impacts on the road network would not be severe, so it would not be sufficiently substantial as to outweigh the benefits of the proposal in isolation. We're now going to turn to the public benefits of the scheme. The proposal would represent much needed grade A supply in the mid to larger band size range of industrial units where there is little to no availability. Substantial economic and social benefits would arise from the proposal. It's been estimated that the potential number of employees would vary from approximately 579 for the lowest employment generating use, which is B8, to approximately 1,450 for research and development use. Further jobs would be created during the construction phase also. This job creation would in turn boost the local economy. Social benefits would arise from the creation of new jobs, resulting in additional spending to support local services and facilities alongside further investment into local infrastructure. The development proposes improvements to the existing transport network to mitigate the impacts of the development and whose effects would extend beyond the immediate boundary of the development into the wider community. These benefits include a public transport financial obligation to fund sustainable transport modes into the site and delivery of improvements to highways to mitigate network capacity and enhancements to the existing public right-of-way network. For the detailed element of the application, the site achieves a considerable biodiversity net gain. The outline element of the application is reserved matters for landscape with all details yet to be submitted and currently identifies a net loss in habitat units. However, this is considered that it would come forward at the reserve matter stage and there would be a net gain if it uses the principles set out within the full application. The design code and parameters for the development combined with the recommendations of the ecological impact assessment and the establishment of significant net gain on the southern parcel indicate considerable credibility and reliability that the northern parcel will also achieve these regulations. Development take a holistic approach to the integration of sustainable design from inception with BREEAM Very Good. The environmental performance of new buildings, particularly regard to CO2 emissions, would aspire to exceed the national standards set by the current building regulations. Any new building would achieve a carbon emission reduction improvement over and above the building regulations, with minimum of 30% projected energy requirements with renewable energy technology. All of these principles have been embedded in the design code. The overall design is of high quality and well thought out. And the proposed development area sits within a landscape setting which has been designed to successfully integrate the development into the surrounding context. The landscape-led approach would provide a holistic environment throughout the site and make use of quality materials and coherent design strategy. The landscape strategy would provide natural buffers along boundaries with landscape bunds, and the scale of development would sit comfortably within the immediate context, and no harm has been identified to the listed buildings to the south. The overall building design and consideration of mass has been well thought out, and the design which has evolved in order to positively respond to existing buildings, short-range views and sensitive boundaries. In conclusion, when considering the planning balance and having regard to the adverse impacts and benefits outlined above and to the requirements of the NPPF as a whole, officers have concluded that the benefits of the proposal outweigh the adverse impacts. Consequently, it's recommended that planning permission is granted for the proposed development, subject to recommended conditions and Section 106 agreement. Thank you. I'll take a breath.
Thank you, Alison. And we have seen the updated conditions list that has been circulated to us all. Can I, before I hand over to members, could you just ask to explain one more thing to me?
Sure.
What is a Grade A building?
It's top of the range. I think it comes from. It's basically top of the range in terms of environmental standards building, which, as I understand it from my learning process of industrial units, is for if people are investing in buildings, this day and age, they have to be of a certain standard to be invested in terms of environmental quality, climate change. So it's top of the range building.
So similar to an EPC, but for an industrial unit, presumably.
Yeah, I have actually explained it in 11.22 of my report. If you want more.
Okay, thank you.
11.17, should I say, of my report, if you want further clarification on that.
That'll do, I think. Thanks very much. Members, I'll hand it over to you. Councillor Hooks.
Lovely, thank you. And thank you, Alison, for that very great, long presentation. I've been struggling with this one, looking at it. While I agree with the benefits and the economic benefits and obviously the logical extension to Horizon 120, yes, I think it should happen. But my concern is the deviation from my local plan. It's been hard fought to get our local plan in place. We've had so much speculative development while we were getting our local plan in place, and now we're being asked to approve something that isn't in our plan. Virtually everything that comes before us to be refused at these meetings, the first line of refusal is not in the local plan. Even the planning application before us tonight, it was mentioned that the policy doesn't support it. And this is where I'm struggling with. I get that we should be doing the phase 2. It's the right place. Everything is there for it. It's just not in our plan. And I'm struggling to agree to go against our policies, because if we go against our policies, where does that leave us with all the applications? I know in the past few months sitting on this council, there have been applications where actually we probably thought actually they were okay, but we couldn't really go any further forward with them because they were outside the development plan. And that's what I'm grappling with myself. Thank you.
Can I just, before I pass on to members, could I just ask you to explain? I know it's set out in your report, Alison, but just the sort of policy context, take into account Councillor Hook's point.
You are quite right. It is not located. It is not an allocated site in the local plan. Horizon 120 is an allocated employment site. This site is an extension to the existing Horizon 120 site for the obvious reasons that it was such a success. It was never put forward through the local plan process at the time, not understanding the success of the Horizon 120 site that hadn't yet kind of come to fruition. I think, as I have outlined in my report, that the nature of the application is due to market need. The NPPF policy does state that it supports economic growth and changes in economic growth and where the need is needed, if that makes sense, where the growth is needed. The application has been accompanied by a marketing report that has been assessed by our policy officers who agree with the principles in that marketing report, in that the number of units, the Horizon 120 is successful in terms of the larger units because of the strategic road network and the marketed demands, and I think this is completely market-led. You have a site that is now sandwiched in between an industrial estate and a 100-hectare solar farm, which we have no brownfield sites to bring forward for large industrial units next to a strategic road network. And this is the obvious location outside of the local plan, and the application has been assessed on its merits with the existing road infrastructure, that the accesses can go straight through to the sites. Yes, there is not much opportunity for additional cycling and walking into the site, so the sustainability of the site has been taken into account as part of the planning balance, and necessary mitigation has been requested. But I do understand your concerns that it is not in the local plan, but the benefits from officer assessment is that the benefits outweigh the adverse impacts and the conflict with the development plan. Does that explain?
Yes, thank you, Alison, for that. Councillor Hooks does have a valid point on that. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. For the same reasons as Councillor Hooks has raised, I don't struggle with this actually. I'm very clear we should be refusing it. Absolutely down the line. Previous application for the Grange was for 8 detached houses, And we all sat here and said, oh, it's outside the local plan, it's in the countryside, we're going to refuse it, and we did, unanimously. Here we have enormous buildings. So that would be one of the largest buildings in the district, plonked in the middle of an arable field, which is not in our local plan. So the correct way for this to come forward, as Councillor Hooks I think was alluding to, is through the plan process. The council's just gone out for a call for sites. So that's the route. It should come in for the call for sites if that's what the applicants want to do, and it should be assessed through the local plan process, through the local plan committee, and there should be a democratic process as to whether we think, as a council, this large chunk of land should be added on to Horizon 120. Because, I'll be blunt, what I think is going on here is we have the corporate ambitions of the council up against the planning system. And the planning system, we are here to defend and to make the decisions on planning terms, not what the council would like to do corporately. The other thing I would say is the idea that we don't have other land. We just granted, controversially, a big area of land in North East Witham into what used to be Rivenhall Parish for big warehouses. Land at Maltings Lane, Witham, lies idle, that has not been come forward for development. That's allocated and in the local plan, and there are plenty of other sites as well. So I'm sorry, I don't buy that line. Also, local to this, the loss of arable and countries farmland is enormous. We've got the solar farm, we've got Horizon 120, we've got this field, we've got the Great Notley extension all the way down Bakers Lane, over 1,000 houses. You add all that lot up. And as I've said at previous meetings, I don't think anyone's keeping count of the amount of good quality BMV land we've lost. This is grade 2. There's not a lot of grade 1. This is good quality farmland that we would be putting under buildings. I also don't buy the line that there's fantastic biodiversity gain. Actually, most of it is in a fairly thin ribbon around the outside, and the species that are going to benefit from that are the ones that can coexist with enormous industrial buildings and all the activity that goes along with it. They're not necessarily going to be some of the more sensitive species. We've also got the issue of traffic. Our main towns now, particularly Witham and Braintree, are grinding to a halt at peak times. And this is only going to make that worse. So, for all those reasons, I think this should be refused. I'm sorry to say, because I take the point about employment and all the rest of it. It's premature. It's premature to the plan process. And I think we need to be bold tonight and to say, no, in planning terms, at this current point in time, this is not acceptable.
Yes, Neil's just going to come back on that.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott, for the points raised. Alison may come back on some of the detailed points, but just around the point of principle and the point that Councillor Hooks raised, I mean, if we just think back to the Grange application, which you mentioned earlier, the recommendation from officers was refusal for the 8 houses, but that wasn't solely on the basis that the development was outside the development boundary. It was certainly referenced in the reason for refusal, but when we were considering the application and considering the recommendation, there was a clearly identified list of additional harms, which, yeah, absolutely, but which officers in that case felt outweighed the benefits that would come from that scheme. What we're saying in this case, we've done the same exercise, so we're identifying the conflict with the local plan. We're not trying to get away from that. What Alison's done in a detailed report is go through and consider the benefits and the harms that arise. And in this case, the officer recommendation is quite strongly that the benefits of the scheme would outweigh the harms. So it's not to say there aren't harms, it's certainly the loss of BMV and others that you mentioned, there are harms there, but there's also significant benefits in terms of the jobs, the biodiversity and so on. Around the point on biodiversity, I mean, that's an assessment of the site as a whole at the moment. So the assessment's been made by the ecologist. It looks at the overall value of the site, and the BNG is looking at what can be provided, which is of a higher quality, which exceeds what's there at the moment, albeit alongside the built development. But that can be done through, what's quite, I think, for a commercial development, quite generous provision of open space and landscaping, sensitive design. We saw some of the sections there which showed the space, the landscaping that's being proposed. So I absolutely understand the point, and as planners, the first thing we all think about when we look at an application, or even when we start doing the job, is what does the plan tell us to do? And that's always our starting point, and the NPPF says that's the case. But what we also have to do again, with national guidance, is look beyond that, look at the benefits, look at the harms, and carry out that assessment here. So I think it really comes down to the weight, sorry, I'm pointing over there, like it's still there, but the list of benefits and harms, and it's the weight that you attach to each one. Obviously, that's a subjective judgment. As officers, we've made our assessment, and we consider there's significant weights. We wouldn't say it's a finely balanced decision, as we sometimes do when we're looking at this. We come to members and say we think it's finely balanced, but we think it's marginally a refusal, marginally an approval. I think in this case we feel quite strongly it's approval. I think the point about, I'm sorry, I'll let Alison come back on any of the other points, is the point about corporate interests and planning interests. I mean, as an authority, we have very clear divides between what happens corporately and what happens in terms of planning. So in the time that I've been here, I can say, and I mean, Alison, I'm sure will back me up, is we've not had pressure from members, corporate members of the management team, anything like that, on an application where we've been led by the council's other interests, whether we're landowner or have other interests where we potentially would benefit, for the very reason that that's not the function of the planning system. So as officers, you know, I'd certainly sort of push back against that and say, you know, this isn't being led by a corporate agenda and other benefits. We're looking at the planning benefits and the public benefits of the application and weighing that against the harm, which we've acknowledged. I'll stop now, and if Alison's got any of the other points on the other points that you raised, Councillor Abbott, I'll let her come back.
I've lost my train of thought now, Neil. Thank you. I think in terms of the need, I do understand, and I do understand about the B&V. As officers, we have to, as Neil said, assess the benefits and the adverse impacts, and go with the guidance of MPPF, which shows that we have to be mindful of marketing the changes in the market. My understanding is that there was a deficit in the market for larger units, which has been filled by Horizon 120. This is for up and coming future market, and I think it's fair to say that the application would not be coming forward should there not be a need in the market for this. This isn't council land. This is Marshgate development. This is not council land where we're plugging this as a council, essentially, and we've had to take into consideration the MPPF. The appropriate level of assessments have been submitted with the application in terms of the market need, have been assessed, and the market need, regardless of what Malting Lane are proposing, I'm not sure of the actual size of those units or whether they're grade A or whether they have investors or if it's pension funds, but for this particular development, it's come forward, and I understand that there's a lot of interest, just as there is with Horizon 120 that is being built out as we speak.
Councillor Bursflint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I would like to disassociate myself with any comments made regarding this being a corporate, we're following the corporate avenue on this and not the planning. In the 40-odd years I've been on this council with a break of 4, it's never happened before, and I cannot see it happening in the future, and I think it's quite an insult to planning officers sitting at the head of the table, because it's never been put on them and it would never be put on them. They come up with their professional planning reasons. Thank you. With regard to the site, the Horizon 120, for those that have actually visited the site, walked the site, spent time on the site, will see just how well that works. Not only with the people using the units that are built on there, but with members of the public and nature. The place absolutely amazes me how many dog walkers there are there, and how many there are that take the dogs into the cafe and have a good time and give them good custom as well. Because I did have a little smile to myself when I see that the bridleways were being kept and they're going to be used, and I'm thinking, is the CAF going to use some sort of building or so the horses can go and eat, because it's that user friendly? To compare this with the previous one, I think is, well, I don't understand it really. It's 8 houses with lots of reasons why we shouldn't be building them against industrial units. But Alison, for clarity, can you just repeat the numbers of jobs that this may attract?
So this is an estimation based on the uses that have been proposed. So from 579 jobs, if it was solely B8 purposes, up to 1,450 for if it was solely maximum research and development, which is EG2 use class. I imagine it will be somewhere in between because there is a flexible use for the sites. So it will be again market demand as to what comes forward at the outline stage should the application be approved.
Thank you. And that is one of the biggest points, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
I think Councillor Diamond, did you want to speak? And then Councillor Beavers.
I'll be brief because actually I think you've covered most of what I wanted to say, but given that we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis and the economy being in the precarious state that it is, I would not feel comfortable in all good consciousness turning down an application with such economic and social benefits. I understand it's not perfect, I understand that it is outside the local plan, but given the balance, I don't think I could in all good conscience vote against this. Thank you.
Councillor Beavers.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I remember many years ago, well, not that many actually, and I'm sure members around this table, some of them will remember, a comment that was made by Councillor Lady Newton where she said, members, if we're not careful tonight, we're going to bust a great big hole right through our local plan process. And tonight, members, if we allow this application, we're going to bust a great big hole right through our local plan process. And let's be clear, we're not saying no, we're just saying not now, because there is a process that this council has, and it's called the local plan process. And we have a local plan committee. And I take on board the point that's being made about, you know, the growth of jobs in this district. But let's not forget, it was only 2 meetings ago when this committee, because it was deemed that we didn't have the right policies to support enterprise in the rural communities, not only refused an application, but shut down the business from operating at that site. And I just think that we know, if you're going to talk about corporate priorities of the council, you know, we're talking about being fit for the future, and we're talking about levelling up. Well, I'm not sure exactly who this is level for, because it's not level for the enterprises in the rural communities that want to grow. And actually, if you think about the council's corporate plan, which we've just gone out and consulted on, and we had the member development evening, the top priority, the number one top priority of concern for the residents of our district is actually congestion. That's what they're worried about. And I'm not quite sure who this, you know, this great big building is going to work for, because it's not going to work for the people of the north of the district. And I'm not trying to cause a division, but it's not going to work for them. When you've got examples of people that live in the north of the district, it's taken them 1 hour and 30 sometimes to get to Braintree. 1 hour 30 minutes to get to Braintree. And it really, I agree with Councillor Hook. Morally, and as a question of consistency, I can't support it, because how on earth are we going to defend other applications that come forward? And what precedent are we setting for those people that are trying to have growth in our rural communities that can't? And I have to be completely honest, when I looked at this application this evening, and I come from an area where over the last 20 to 30 years, we've closed down businesses. You know, businesses have gone. Look at Premdor in Sybil Headingham, where at that stage, the developer of that site, and maybe I've got some of the history that perhaps other members haven't got, we allowed that site to be closed down, and at that point they said they were going to reinvest in Braintree. They never did. We allowed that to happen. So I think for me, it's not about no, it's about not now, and we should be going through the correct channels to bring this development forward. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to start by commending Alison for her report, which is, yes, lengthy, but actually very complex. And I know that a great deal of work has gone on between officers and the applicants to get this before us this evening. A huge amount of work, and that is to everyone's credit. Yes, this is a site that's not allocated in the local plan, but to try and compare it with the previous application is like comparing chalk with cheese. The previous application, as I and others said, had some very good points, some good eco credentials, but that did not outweigh the objections that we raised in terms of its very rural position, the fact that it was under the threshold for providing affordable homes, and that seemed to be deliberately engineered, and so on. The positives for this application far outweigh any thoughts about, well, it's not in the local plan, so we shouldn't be doing it. It's a perfectly suitable site, and I probably don't need to repeat it, but I will because it's important. It's an extension to the very successful current Horizon 120 site, which is thriving. It's still being built out. Now, actually, we could, as a local planning authority, have allowed that site to be filled with huge distribution warehouses. Could have done that in a heartbeat, but we have not gone down that route. And actually, what it has is a really good mix of high quality, successful businesses, and I would be confident that the same would apply to this site. There is an identified need for it. I was really pleased to hear Councillor Diamond's comment about the employment, and that at a time when we need to be encouraging and supporting business and the economy, this is something we should be supporting. It's in terms of access, facilities, which Councillor Bowers-Flint mentioned, and so on, it's absolutely ideal. And then on the other side, there is the approved solar farm. It can hardly be said that this is in an unsuitable rural location. It simply isn't. There is so much going for it, and it doesn't mean that that if we approve this tonight, I'm sorry, it doesn't blast a hole in the local plan. It doesn't mean that when other applications come forward that are outside the local plan, that we have to look at them and say, oh, well, we approved Horizon 120, that's like we've got to approve others. It simply doesn't work that way. And I'm sorry, but that is just not the case. Yes, or okay, it's taking up some best value land, but actually it is a very small amount. 2 trees are being lost, and a huge amount of planting. I won't go on anymore but I could do. I think this is a really, really good, well thought out, well researched application that we have before us this evening. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm fully supportive of what we've just heard from Councillor Spray, so I won't go there. But what I would like to suggest is that what we have here is a set of arguments which seem to be attempting to balance planning process with economic development and growth. And I'm sorry, but I believe that part of our purpose here is to make judgments. It's not simply applying a set of rules to a situation. And so I believe we're here to make a judgment. And my judgment is that the opportunity cost of supporting process in terms of refusing this and then expecting the applicants to go through the call for sites process and then hope it makes its way through to the next iteration of the local plan, the opportunity cost of that would be vast. And I think it would be irresponsible of us not to bear that in mind. And so I have absolutely no problem in supporting officer recommendation, and I'm grateful to them, as has already been said, for the enormous amount of very high quality work which we have seen exhibited here tonight. Thank you.
Neil's going to just comment on that.
So, just a couple of points from that Councillor Beavis raised that I thought it was just worth coming back on to provide a bit of clarity. I mean, we absolutely, as officers, understand the concerns of residents and members about congestion and the highway network and the ability to get around. I think part of the reason that we think this scheme should be supported is that it puts employment in a place where it's close to the strategic road network, where it isn't subject to congestion. We're not putting an employment use on the edge of an existing town which is congested, where there would be issues with people and large vehicles getting onto the strategic road network. So we think the proximity to the strategic road network is part of the reason that Horizon 120 has been successful, and part of the reason that we think this scheme could also be successful and actually would create jobs for the district, which I think we all feel are needed, but in a manner which isn't going to significantly or adversely affect, as it would if the similar development was brought forward in other parts of the district where the highway network wasn't as robust or didn't have capacity. So I think that was a point worth making. The point that Councillor Beavis made around the rural north and the communities, I mean, absolutely, I remember the previous discussions we've had on that around the site at Gosfield and the scaffolding company, so I absolutely remember that. I can also remember at that meeting we raised the point that actually if members have that concern around the way that our planning policies do or don't support businesses in rural areas, that's probably something that needs to be looked at, or I would suggest that might be something that we need to look at as part of the local plan review. And certainly if that's members' feeling, that's what we would encourage you to do. I think conflating that with this application, though, is perhaps misguided. Again, we're having to make decisions on the benefits and the harms of each one. The site that Councillor Beavis was talking about, again, there was the conflict with the plan that we felt as officers, but there was also harms around residential amenity and visual impact and so on. And that's the point I'm making again, and going back to Councillor Abbott's point, really it comes down to members in their own mind looking at the planning balance and the sort of headings which Alison set out in the report and attaching weight to each one, which is subjective. There's no right or wrong to that. But I think, as members have said, everybody's acknowledging there's benefits to the scheme and there's harms. It's what benefits and what weight you apply to those, and particularly the conflict with the plan. But certainly as officers, we would never recommend an application is refused because simply because there is conflict with the development plan. You always need to be looking more widely at the benefits and the harms, albeit weighing up if there is conflict with the development plan. But I won't add any more because I think it's been well aired, but I just wanted to come back on a couple of points that Councillor Beavis raised because I thought that was hopefully helpful in members' consideration.
Thank you, Neil. But just a couple of points myself. First of all, I think it was the helpful line in your report that planning permission must be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations dictate otherwise, and one of the main material considerations is the NPPF, and it strongly supports. One of the things that one of the aspects of sustainability is obviously economic development, and for my mind, this has obviously got very strong, substantial economic benefits. But the only thing that is disappointing me on this application is I think it's a disappointment that there isn't an opportunity to create a better walking and cycling network across the dual carriageway that is the A131. Personally, I think having a signalised light just beyond a roundabout on a dual, particularly on a dual carriageway, is extremely dangerous. And I have been trying to navigate teaching my son driving lessons in various Nedmans where they have lots of these things, and as a driver you're just not anticipating that you're going to go round a roundabout and straight into a traffic light. I think it's quite dangerous. I know that the Active Travel England highlighted this as well. Was there not an opportunity to create another, probably an underpass under the road?
Come back to you on that, Chair. We have had discussions with highways throughout the process, throughout the PPA. It was something that we did raise about the walking and cycling, and it's obviously something that Active Travel England looked at as well. Whilst they do a desk-based assessment, they haven't actually been to the site. So it's the recommendation from highways was that they do not. And I won't quote them here, they do no longer look at subways or over road bridges because of the safety aspects. They prefer, and their preference is always to have at-grade crossing. There is no capacity issue for the grade crossing, so there was no mitigation or financial contribution that we could have asked the developer to mitigate against the proposal because there isn't actually an issue with the capacity for that crossing. It's seen as safe by highways. There were no objections from highways, and therefore there is an existing subway that you can access from the existing Horizon 120, and you can go through to Great Notley to the country park, and then you can go into kind of the top of Great Notley village. To the south, it's a bit more difficult because the footpath, the footpath network, you still have to cross near Blackley Quarry and then kind of go under. And then to the west, there's not really a destination that you'd want to go to, particularly if you're an employee as well. I can't imagine that you'd walk across that way. But we did look at it, Chair, and it's a strategic road. It's the A131. It's without a bridge or a subway. Then there's no additional improvements that were asked for. Let's put it that way, from highways.
Okay, thanks. Well, if that's highways don't like subways or bridges, we'll have to put up with dicing with death crossing the road. Councillor Schwer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to make a few comments on top of the comments already made by Councillor Spray and Councillor Holland. I think one aspect of this, apart from all the MPPF and actually through the good presentation and the hard work, I can concur with the comments about that already. But there's also about the sustainability here and the connectivity. It's quite natural. We tend to forget that we've got GridServe there. We've also got DigiGo. We've also got a railway station, and we've also got existing good road connection to get us about. And this is really important for the proposed use for this planning application before us tonight, although it's a hybrid one. All of those are really good. Plus the fact that we've got the plaza there, which is actually going to help with regards to sustainability, because people actually haven't got to go on stay, they can stay there. We've got lots of walking, cycling, we've got the green spaces, we've even got an open space with a country park right on the end. So taking all of those factors into account, it's really natural that this facility, this hybrid application, would actually fit very well with a lot of our current policies, as far as I'm concerned, especially the planning ones. And for all of those reasons, I think it dovetails into the ambitions of what we have at Braintree District Council within employment, and taking the mean of the figures that we potentially could have, talking about 800 people. 800 people, maybe 800 families being supported. All of that money coming into the economy was going to be likely be spent in and around Braintree District and area. It's going to increase our ability. It's also potentially going to increase the skills too. It's going to increase the ability of this area to respond to the demands of commercialisation that is, important. And we have to stay, as the MPPF is overriding, in the interests of the economy going forward, and also that investment. So although the points are being made about the local plan, my understanding of the local plan is that it doesn't stop other planning applications coming forward. So I fully support this application and I move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to comment on this application? Councillor Abbott.
Yes, briefly, Madam Chairman. I don't like being lectured to by Councillor Bowers-Flint or anyone else. When I made the point about corporate priorities, it is quite clear that this council has a corporate priority of supporting Horizon 120. Its corporate documents mention it. That does not imply in any way that I am saying that undue pressure has been brought on the planning department. I never said that. That's what Councillor Bowers-Flint seemed to be inferring. Secondly, on employment, both Councillor Hooks and I clearly made the point that we're not against this, and Councillor Beavers, we're not against this in principle. It's a question of democracy and process. And when Councillor Holland said about, we shouldn't get in the way of this development, we should let it carry on and not have to go through the arduous process of the local plan. But why have a local plan then?
Exactly.
Why not just have a complete open season where developers do what they like anywhere? I don't think this application would be coming forward on any other site but here. I don't think a site like this around Witham or Halstead would be coming forward for approval. I think it's because it's associated with Horizon 120. It's to do with that corporate pressure the council has that this is a big success and we want to make it an even bigger success. But that does not imply that in any way that I'm saying undue pressure has been brought. I don't believe it has. It's more to do with the atmosphere. So I feel that if we grant this tonight, we are driving a coach and horses through the local plan. I think it's almost unprecedented, actually. This isn't a small site. This is a strategic site. It's a very large site. And I really wonder what the local plan process is for, because it's also very unfair to a lot of other people in the district who might want to put forward sites in the call for sites, and they're thinking, well, why should we have to go through all that when these guys don't have to? I shall definitely be voting against this application for that planning reason.
Right, well, I think we've given this all good air. I don't see any other hands up. So you've moved this, Councillor Schwer, that we grant this application, and it's seconded by Councillor Holland. That's with the amended conditions that have been circulated previously. All those in favour of granting this application? And those against? Members, that application has been granted.
Any abstentions?
Oh, sorry, are there any abstentions? I don't think there were. No abstentions. Thank you. Yeah, I'll just move it. Yes.
The last three applications should be.
Yeah, we'll just. And so that we can continue along the 3 hours. Councillor Holland, can I find that seconder? Councillor Spray, all those in favour of? Thank you, members. Right, that gives us a chance to continue. So we'll now move on. Hopefully these last applications will be fairly swift. So our next application is item 5G on the agenda. 5H on the agenda. This is application number 24/00290, listed building consent at September Barn in Little Yeldham. We don't have any speakers, but this presentation is going to be given by Harrison. I'd like to introduce Harrison. This is his first appearance for the committee this evening. So over to you, Harrison. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, members. So this application is for listed building consent for the replacement of 11 windows to the Grade 2 listed September Barn, which is in North End to the east of Little Yeldham. And the application is being heard because the applicant is a employee of Braintree District Council. So you can make out the site here etched in red, September Barn, which is to the north of North End Road. And the dwelling really marks the distinction between the built form of the rural settlement to the east and the surrounding countryside to the south, west and north of the site. This is also clear on the block plan, where just beyond the western boundary is open countryside. The southern elevation of the barn as well is directly abutting the roadside, as is the adjoining stable block, which you can just make out here. It extends eastwards from the barn. So moving on to the proposal itself, there's one window proposed for replacement in the north elevation. The other larger window that you can see there was subject to a previous listed building consent in 2021, which has been granted, and that window has already been replaced. Similarly, on this western elevation, the midsection there, the windows have been replaced as part of that former approval. So this application essentially seeks consent for the replacement of all of those windows which weren't part of that former consent. And on that elevation you've got the second window, which is to the northern end of the western elevation, and then windows 3, 4, 5 and 6, which respectively flank that middle section where the windows have already been replaced. And then to the southern end of that elevation are windows 7 and 8. Moving on to the south elevation, so this is the one which is directly abutting the road. It's just the two windows proposed for replacement in this elevation, both at first floor level within the barn. This image was taken directly from the road, and again you can see those two windows at first floor level. And finally, moving on to the last elevation, the eastern elevation, just the one window is proposed for replacement. This is within the adjoining stable, situated again at first floor level just below the gable end. So in summary, the application is for listed building consent, and therefore officer's assessment is with regard to the impacts upon the heritage asset. As the windows being proposed for replacement are all date to the modern conversion of the building, they have no historic significance in their own right. Their replacements would be on a like-for-like basis and would not visually alter the external appearance of the building, and no objection has been raised by Essex County Council's historic buildings consultant. Therefore, it's recommended that the application is approved, subject to the list of conditions and reasons set out. Thank you.
Thank you, Harrison. Members. Councillor Schwer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Taking into account what has just been said by the officer, the fact that it's grade 2, it's 11 windows, like for like, there's no objections, and it's employee of BDC, otherwise it probably wouldn't have come before this committee. So I just support officer's recommendation and move it. Thank you.
Councillor Abbott seconding that. Any other member wish to comment on this? I assume not. That's been moved by Councillor Schwer and seconded by Councillor Abbott that we grant this application. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you, members. So the penultimate application this evening is item 5I on your agenda. That is application number 24/003134, 8 Swinbourne Drive. And that presentation, we don't have a speaker. The presentation is going to be done by Janine.
Thank you. This application is for planning permission for change of use from Class B2 to Class B8. So B2 is general industrial to Class B8, which is storage and distribution. In terms of the location, the existing site is located in Swinbourne Drive in Braintree, and it's located within the existing Springfield Industrial Estate, allocated as a strategic employment site within the local plan. The proposal would maintain a policy-compliant industrial usage, carrying economic and social benefits consistent with the planning objectives of the NPPF and the adopted local plan. The next few slides show the existing and proposed site plan, ground floor, first floor and front and rear elevations, but I just want to point out there is no operational development associated with this application in terms of any changes to the layout, access or the actual design. So I'll just go through the plans now. This is the existing proposed ground floor. As I said, it all remains the same. The first floor, which has a mezzanine, the rear and front elevations, side elevations and the parking layout to the front. In terms of the photos, this is the existing front elevation of the existing building and site. This is to the immediate north, and this is to the west, looking down Swinburne Road. To summarise, as I said, the application is located within Springfield Industrial Estate. The proposal to convert it from Class B2 industrial use to warehousing, Class B8 is a policy compliant use, and it would maintain the industrial usage on this site. No operational development is proposed, and there's no adverse impacts that have been identified from the proposed change of use, including no identified highway grounds, parking implications, or impact on residential amenity. Therefore, the recommendation is to grant planning permission.
Thank you, Janine. Members? Councillor Spray?
Thank you, Chairman. I think this is very straightforward. I actually can't see any reason why we shouldn't grant that this evening, so I'll move officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Find a seconder. Councillor Bowes-Flint. All those in favour of granting this application? That again is unanimous. Thank you, members. And that brings us on to the last application this evening, which is item 6 on the agenda. Application number 23/03030, which is a tree TPO application at Priory House, Ashen Road, Ovington. And Neil is going to do a presentation.
Good evening, members. Thank you. This is an application for work to 3 trees which are covered by a tree preservation order. The trees are, or the works will take place within the grounds of Priory House, which is Ashen Road in Ovington, although, as you'll have seen from the plans and also the representation that was received from the neighbour, the trees actually stand within the adjoining property, Ovington Grange. So this is the application site, so you can see near the junction of Tilbury Road and Ashen Road, that's the property, and you can see quite clearly from the aerial image the extent of tree cover to the rear of the property. So this is a plan showing the location of the 3 trees labelled T1, T2 and T3. And this is a photo taken from outside the site looking back across, so you can see the trees form part of a prominent tree group within the landscape, easily visible from the road and of a size and a quality, which obviously led to them being protected in the first place. This is tree T1, so you can see the limb and the branches identified where the work is proposed. Similar with tree 2, where the branch is proposed to be removed, and the limb on T3. So just to confirm, as set out in the report, the application is being reported to committee because the applicant is an employee of the council. As with some of the other tree work applications we have at the moment, we're being supported by colleagues at Place Services. So this has been assessed by a tree officer there. They've raised no objection to the proposed works. They consider that local amenity will be protected, as will the health of the trees, and that the work is reasonable and necessary. And therefore, the application is recommended to be granted, subject to the conditions set out within the report. Thank you.
Members? Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Looks entirely sensible. They're big trees, very prominent, very nice trees, poplars, but what that work will do is to reduce both the gravity pull on those branches which are widely displayed and also wind pressure, because if they do come under excessive pressure, that's more likely to bring more of it down than just those points. So it looked entirely sensible to me, and if no other member wants to speak, I'm happy to move officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Would like to find us, does that find a seconder? Councillor Holland. So all those in favour of granting this application? The members, that is unanimous, and that brings us finally to the end of our meeting. Subject to, and I just want to say, members, thank you very much. I know it's been a very long evening for everybody. Appreciate your being here and your indulgence, and thank you to all the officers as well.